All right, Boker Tov. I assume because I'm late that we're already streaming, so that's good. It's one thing to be here on time. It's another thing to be here on time and also pass through the gauntlet of all the people saying, Rabbi, excuse me, which is good. Okay, I see our numbers have dwindled again. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We'll see how many make it all the way to the end, right? Getting up early. You guys had too much fun on free day yesterday. That's the problem. I took advantage of it, and I actually got some sleep. I went to bed early last night. I got a full 8 hours. I'm feeling good. Amen. Okay. Still don't get this waking up for 8 o'clock breakfast thing. That's because I don't normally get up that early, but hey, I figured it out. All right, a couple of quick announcements before we get started. So we do have a lost and found by the admin desk. Please also check Pritchell front desk if you have anything that you're missing. Let's see. We still have volunteers that are needed for airport transports. See the resource table, again, by the admin desk there if you can help with people going to to the airports at the end of the feast. Excuse me. And also, just want to announce that if you are in the nursery in IV5, that the mothers in there need to be aware that there are people that are listening to live stream, and so you can't just be in there talking too loud because you're supposed to be in there with your children but still watching live stream while you're there. Okay. Today, before we get started, just a couple other things, reminders. So we're now on the flip side of your schedule. We got half of it done. Half of it done. I'm wondering, should I applaud or not? I mean, I'm glad we had a great first half, but now we're almost done. But okay, we can clap. Okay, so today we start in the afternoon, the Up to the Challenge teachings. So I will be teaching in the afternoon, and then we'll have dance instruction. That'll all be in here. We do have activities for your children. They will be going up to the gym. So they'll be meeting here to go up there in the afternoon. And then, of course, tomorrow is Shabbat, and we will have services in the afternoon. For those that some people were asking about the dress, recommendations. You don't need to dress up until services. So you don't have to dress up tonight. You don't have to dress up tomorrow during the early sessions. We just ask people to dress nicer for the service itself, okay? Now, I will be dressed up in the morning. Don't let that confuse you. I just don't like to change. Okay, I don't have enough time, and I'm too lazy to do that, so I will just be dressed all day tomorrow. All right. I think that's going to cover it. Okay, and then tonight, the moment you've all been waiting for, the open Midrash time. Okay, after supper, if you want to be involved in a kind of an open discussion, Q&A, you can ask any questions about anything. Because normally when we do the teachings, even like today, we're going to only talk about the chapters we're reading. But tonight, you can ask questions about almost anything. And so you could be here. That'll be at 7:30 after supper. Okay. I understand that the ladies who got together last night, the Marco Polo group, had a great time. Yay. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Today, let me make sure I've got the reading set up here. Where did I put the sheet? These are not them. I had it up here, and now I don't see it. Here it is. Okay. All right, so today is day 3 of the readings. We're going to be starting at chapter 15, and we're going to go through 21, 23. Okay? So we're going to be doing 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. And so that's quite a bit of reading. But I actually only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 readers. Okay? So if you guys are doing a head count here, we're going to get to 11. All right. All those of you who know about Spinal Tap, this one goes up to 11. Okay. You still need to see that movie. All right, large print scriptures, here we go. You guys enjoying these Deuteronomy studies? All right, fantastic. All right, so that's the end of that chapter. Good. Okay, and if you come up, you can read out of your scripture. You can read out of this one. The large print one is up here, and that should be good to go. All right. So just a reminder, so what we're going to do, we had our announcements real quick, and then we're now going to do the readings. After the readings, I may mention the announcements again in case people were late, and then we'll go ahead and discuss the chapters that we're reading today, chapters 15 through 21. Okay, each reader is going to be called up. Each one, when they come up, I'm going to say a blessing over them. And when you come up, I'm going to hand you the mic, so we're going to kind of switch this out. Okay? And just try to have the microphone aimed at your mouth and keep it pretty close. Okay, come on up. Ben. All right, here we go. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ben, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Ben's going to start us in chapter 15 and read the first 10 verses.
At the end of every 7 years, you make a release of debts, and this is the word of the release. Every creditor is to release what he has loaned to his neighbor. He does not require it of his neighbor or his brother, because it is called the release of Yahweh. Of a foreigner you could require it, but your hand is to release whatever is owed by your brother. Only there should be no poor among you. For Yahweh does greatly bless you in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess as an inheritance, only if you diligently obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to guard to do all these commands which I am commanding you today. For Yahweh your Elohim shall bless you as he promised you, and you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow, and you shall rule over many nations, but they do not rule over you. When there is a poor man with you, one of your brothers, within any of the gates in your land, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving to you, do not harden your heart, nor shut your hand from your poor brother. For you shall certainly open your hand to him, and certainly lend to him enough for his need, whatever he needs. Be on guard, lest there be a thought of Belial in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is near, and your eye is evil against your poor brother, and you give him not. And he shall cry out to Yahweh against you, and it shall be a sin in you. You shall certainly give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this reason Yahweh your Elohim does bless you in all your works, and in all to which you put your hand.
Amen. Thank you, Ben. Okay, next up, Sam. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Sam, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Sam's going to take us from verse 11 to the end of the chapter.
Because the poor one does not cease from the land, therefore I am commanding you, saying, you shall certainly open your hand to your brother, to your poor, and to your needy one in your land. When your brother is sold to you, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, and shall serve you 6 years, then let him go free from you in the 7th year. And when you send him away free from you, let him not go away empty-handed. You shall richly supply him from your flock, and from your threshing floor, and from your winepress. With that which Yah has blessed you with, give to him. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim, and Yah your Elohim ransomed you. Therefore I am commanding you this word today. And it shall be, when he says to you, I do not go away from you, because he loves you and your house, because it is good for him with you, then you shall take an awl and thrust it through his ear to the door, and he shall be your servant forever. Do the same to your female servant. Let it not be hard in your eyes when you send him away free from you, for he has been worth a double hired servant in serving you 6 years, and Yah your Elohim shall bless you in all that you do. Set apart to Yah your Elohim all the firstborn males that come from your herd and your flock. Do no work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You and your household are to eat it before Yah your Elohim year by year in the place which Yah chooses. But when there is any defect in it, lame or blind, or has any evil defect, do not slaughter it to Yah your Elohim. Eat it within your gates, the unclean and the clean alike, as the gazelle and as the deer. Only do not eat its blood. Pour it on the ground like water.
Amen. See, there's that gazelle and deer thing again. Ooh. See, now you guys know what that's all about. All right, Shira. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shira, who's come down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Shira is going to take us into chapter 16 and read verses 1 through 17.
Guard the new moon of Aviv, and perform the Pesach to Yahweh your Elohim. For in the new moon of Aviv, Yahweh your Elohim brought you out of Mitzrayim by night. And you shall slaughter the Pesach to Yahweh your Elohim from the flock and the herd in the place where Yahweh chooses to put his name. Eat no leavened bread with it. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread with it, bread of affliction, because you came out of the land of Mitzrayim in haste, so that you remember the day in which you came out of the land of Mitzrayim, all the days of your life. And no leaven should be seen with you in all your border for 7 days. Neither should any of the meat which you slaughter in the evening on the first day stay all night until morning. You are not allowed to slaughter the Pesach within any of your gates, which Yahweh your Elohim gives you, but at the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell. There you slaughter the Pesach in the evening, at the going down of the sun, at the appointed time you came out of Mitzrayim. And you shall roast and eat it in the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses. And in the morning you shall turn and go to your tents. 6 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there is a closing festival to Yahweh your Elohim. You do no work. Count 7 weeks for yourself. Begin to count 7 weeks from the time you begin to put the sickle to the grain. And you shall perform the festival of Shavuot to Yahweh your Elohim, according to the voluntary offering from your hand, which you give as Yahweh your Elohim blesses you. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim, you and your son and your daughter, and your male servant and your female servant, and the Levite who is within your gates, and the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow who are in your midst, at the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell. And you shall remember that you were a slave in Mitzrayim, and you shall guard to do these laws. Perform the festival of Sukkot for 7 days after the ingathering from your threshing floor and from your winepress. And you shall rejoice in your festival, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant and your female servant, and the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates. For 7 days you shall celebrate to Yahweh your Elohim in the place which Yahweh chooses, because Yahweh your Elohim does bless you in all your increase and in all the work of your hands, and you shall be only rejoicing. 3 times a year all your males appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which he chooses, at the festival of Matzot, and at the festival of Shavuot, and at the festival of Sukkot. And none should appear before Yahweh empty-handed, but each one with the gift of his hand, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Shira. All right. Bob. Okay, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Bob, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you get a little complication. You got to cross chapters. So you're going to go from 16:18 to 17:10. Okay, 16:18, which is over here.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, to 17:10.
Thank you. Appoint the judges and officers within your gates, which Yahovah your Elohim is giving you according to your tribes. And they shall the judge with righteous rulings. Do not distort right ruling. Do not show partiality, nor take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of wise and twists the words of the righteous. Follow righteousness alone, so that you live and inherit the land which Yahovah your Elohim is giving you. Do not plant for yourself any trees and Asheroth near the slaughter place of Yahovah your Elohim that you make for yourself. And do not set up a pillar which Yahovah your Elohim hates. Do not slaughter to Yahovah your Elohim a bull or sheep which has any blemish or any evil matter, for that is an abomination to Yahovah your Elohim. When there is found in your midst, in any of your cities which Yahovah your Elohim is giving you, a man or woman who does what is evil in your eyes of Yahovah your Elohim, is transgressing his covenant, and his alone, and served other mighty ones, and bowed down to them, or to the sun, or to the moon, to any hosts of the heavens, which I have not commanded. And it has been made known to you, and you have heard, and have searched diligently. See then, if true, the matter is confirmed that an abomination has been done in Israel. Then you shall bring out to your gates that man or woman who has done this evil matter, and you shall stone him to death, that man or woman, with stones. At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall he that is to die be put to death. He is not to put to death by mouth of one witness. The hand of the witness shall be first against him to put to death, or put him to death, and the hand of all the people last. So shall you purge the evil of your midst. What was the last verse? 10. When any master arises which is too hard for you to judge, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, or between stroke and stroke, matters of strife within your gates, then you shall rise up and go to the place which Yahovah your Elohim chooses, and shall come to the priest, the Levites, to the judge who is in those days, and shall inquire. And they shall declare to you the words of right ruling, and you shall do according to the word which they declare to you from the place which Yahovah chooses. And you shall guard to do all they instruct you.
Amen. Thank you, Bob. Okay, Janet. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Janet, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Janet's going to take us from verse 11 to the end of the chapter.
Thank you, Father. Do according to the Torah in which they teach you, according to the right ruling which they say to you. You do not turn to the right or to the left from the word which they declare to you. And the man who acts arrogantly, so as not to listen to the priest who stands to serve there before Yahweh your Elohim, or to the judge, that man shall die. So you shall purge the evil from Israel. And let all the people hear and fear, and no longer do arrogantly. When you come to the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and shall possess it, and shall dwell in it, and you shall say, let me set a sovereign over me, like all the nations that are around me. You shall certainly set a sovereign over you, whom Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. Set a sovereign over you from among your brothers. You are not allowed to set a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he is not to increase horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Mizraim to increase horses. For Yahweh has said to you, do not return that way again. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. And it shall be, when he sits on the throne of his reign, that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book, from the one before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear Yahweh, his Elohim, and guard all the words of this Torah and these laws, and do them, so that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, and so as not to turn aside from the command, right or left, so that he prolongs his days in his reign, he and his children, in the midst of Israel.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Janet. All right, Jason. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Jason, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Jason's going to take us now into chapter 18 and read verses 1 through 16.
The priest, the Levites, all the tribe of Levi, have no part nor inheritance with Israel. They are to eat the offerings of Yah made by fire, in his inheritance. But among his brothers, Levi has no inheritance. Yah is his inheritance, as he has spoken to him. And this is the priest's right from the people, from those who slaughter a slaughtering, whether it is bull or sheep. They shall give to the priest the shoulder and the 2 cheeks and the stomach, the first fruits of your grain, and your new wine and your oil, and the first of the fleece of your sheep you give to him. For Yah your Elohim has chosen him out of your tribes to stand to serve in the name of Yah, him and his sons forever. And when the Levite comes from one of your gates, from where he has sojourned among all Israel, and shall come with all the desire of his being to the place which Yah chooses, then he shall serve in the name of Yah, his Elohim, like all his brothers, the Levites, who are standing there before Yah. They are to have portion for portion to eat, besides what comes from the sale of his inheritance. When you come into the land which Yah your Elohim is giving you, do not learn to do according to the abominations of those nations. Let no one be found among you who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For whoever does these is an abomination to Yah, and because of these abominations, Yah your Elohim drives them out from before you. Be perfect before Yah your Elohim. For these nations whom you are possessing do listen to those using magic and to diviners. But as for you, Yah your Elohim has not appointed such for you. Yah your Elohim shall rise up for you a prophet, like me from your midst, from your brothers. Listen to him. According to all you asked of Yah your Elohim in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yah my Elohim, nor let me see this great fire any more, lest I die.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Jason. Okay, Rick. Okay, you got one of those cross-chapter deals here going, okay? Okay, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rick, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. And yes, you guessed the right shirt today. Okay. Okay, 1817 to 1914.
And Yah said to me, what they have spoken is good. I shall raise up for them a prophet like you out of the midst of their brothers, and I shall put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And it shall be, the man who does not listen to my words, which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name which I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other mighty ones, even that prophet shall die. And when you say in your heart, how do we know the word which Yah has not spoken? When the prophet speaks in the name of Yah, and the word is not, or comes not, that is the word which Yahweh has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him. When Yahweh your Elohim cuts off the nations whose land Yahweh Elohim is giving you, and you dispossess them and dwell in their cities and in their houses, separate 3 cities for yourself in the midst of your land which Yah your Elohim is giving you to possess. Prepare a way for yourself, and divide into 3 parts the border of your land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to inherit, that any manslayer shall flee there. And this matter of the manslayer who flees there and lives, he who strikes his neighbor unknowingly, not having hated him in time past, even he who goes to the forest with his neighbor to cut timber, and his hand swings a stroke with the axe to cut down the tree, and the head slips from the handle and strikes his neighbor so that he dies, let him flee to one of these cities and live. Lest the revenger of blood, while his displeasure is hot, pursue the manslayer and overtake him, because the way is long, and shall strike his being, though he was not worthy of death, since he had not hated him before. Therefore I am commanding you, saying, separate 3 cities for yourself. And if Yahweh your Elohim enlarges your border as he swore to your fathers, and has given you the land which he promised to give to your fathers, when you guard all this command to do it, which I am commanding you today, to love Yahweh your Elohim, and to walk in his ways all the days, then you shall add 3 more cities for yourself besides these 3, so that the innocent blood is not shed in the midst of your land, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance, or blood guilt shall be upon you. But when anyone hates his neighbor and shall lie in wait for him, and rise against him and strike his being so that he dies, then he shall flee to one of these cities. And the elders of his city shall send and bring him from there, and give him into the hand of the revenger of blood, and he shall die. Your eyes shall not pardon him, but you shall purge the blood of the innocent from Yisrael, so that it might be well with you. Do not remove your neighbor's boundary, which those in the past have set in your inheritance, which you inherit in the land that Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess.
Amen, amen. Thank you. Excellent job, Rick. Appreciate it. Whoops. All right. Amy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Amy, who's come down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Amy, you're also going to do a little bit of a chapter across here. Let's move this over. Turn the page. Thank you. There we go. All right, you're going to go from 19:15 to 20 and verse 7. Okay?
One witness does not rise up against a man concerning any crookedness or any sin that he commits. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, a matter is established. When a malicious witness rises up against any man to accuse him of turning aside, then both men who have the dispute shall stand before Yahweh, before the priests and the judges who serve in those days. And the judges shall diligently search and see if the witness is a false witness who has falsely accused his brother. Then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. And let the rest hear and fear, and never again do this evil matter in your midst. And let your eye not pardon, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. When you go out to battle against your enemies and shall see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim, is with you. And it shall be, when you draw near to the battle, that the priest shall come and speak to the people, and shall say to them, Hear, O Yisrael, you are drawing near today to do battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not fear or tremble or be afraid before them. For Yahweh your Elohim is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. And the officers shall speak to the people, saying, Who is the man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man dedicate it. And who is the man who has planted a vineyard and has not begun to use it? Let him also go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man should begin to use it. And who is the man who is engaged to a woman and has not taken her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle and another man take her.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Amy. Okay, Ali. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ali, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Ali's going to take us now from verse 8 to verse 20. In chapter 20, up here somewhere. 8 to
20. Yeah.
End of the chapter.
End of the chapter. And the officers shall speak further to the people, and say, Who is the man who is afraid and tender of heart? Let him go and return to his house, lest the heart of his brothers faint like his heart. And it shall be, when the officers have finished speaking to the people, that they shall appoint commanders of the divisions to lead the people. When you draw near to a city to fight against it, then you shall make a call for peace to it. And it shall be that if it accepts your call for peace and shall open to you, then all the people found in it are to be your compulsory labor and serve you. But if it does not make peace with you and shall fight against you, then you shall besiege it. And Yahweh your Elohim shall give it into your hands, and you shall strike every male in it with the edge of the sword. Only the women and the little ones and the livestock and all that is in the city, all its spoil, you take as plunder for yourselves. And you shall eat the enemy's plunder which Yahweh your Elohim gives you. Do so to all the cities which are very far from you, which are not of the cities of these nations. Only of the cities of these peoples which Yahweh your Elohim gives you as an inheritance, you do not keep alive any that breathe. But you shall certainly put them under the ban, the Hittite and the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, as Yahweh your Elohim has commanded you, lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations which they have done for their mighty ones. And you sin against Yahweh your Elohim. When you besiege a city for a long time by fighting against it to take it, you do not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. If you do eat of them, do not cut them down. For is the tree of the field a man to be besieged by you? Only the trees which you know are not trees for food you do destroy and cut down, to build siege works against the city that is fighting against you until it falls.
Amen. Okay, 2 more readers, and we've got 2 more people, so that's perfect. Olivier? He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Olivier, who's come to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of your hands. Amen. Okay, Olivier, you've got a very short one. Chapter 21, verses 1 through 9.
When anyone is found slain, lying in the field in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess, and it is not known who struck him, then your elders and your judges shall go out, and they shall measure the distance from the slain man to the cities round about. And it shall be that the elders of the city nearest to the slain man shall take a heifer which has not been worked, on which has not pulled with a yoke, and the elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to a wadi with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown. And they shall break the heifer's neck there in the wadi. And the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for Yahweh your Elohim has chosen them to serve him and to bless in the name of Yahweh. And by their mouths every strife and every stroke is tried. And let all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the wadi. And they shall answer and say, Our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. O Yahweh, forgive your people Israel, whom you have ransomed, and do not allow innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel. And the blood guilt shall be pardoned to them. Thus you purge the guilt of innocent blood from your midst when you do what is right in the eyes of Yahweh.
Amen. Amen. Okay, last reader, Tommy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may bless Tommy, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Tommy's going to take us from verse 10 to the end of the chapter.
When ye go out to fight against your enemies, and Yahweh your Elohim shall give them into your hand, and you shall take them captive, and shall see among the captives a woman fair of form, and shall delight in her and take her for your wife. Then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and trim her nails, and put aside the mantle of her captivity, and shall dwell in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a month of days. And after that you shall go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you are not pleased with her, then you shall let her go at her desire, but you do not sell her at all for silver. Do not treat her harshly, since you have humbled her. When a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they have borne him children, both the loved and the unloved, and the firstborn son is of her who is unloved, then it shall be, on the day he makes his sons to inherit his possessions, he is not allowed to treat the son of the beloved wife as firstborn in the face of the son of the unloved, who is truly the firstborn. But he is to acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. When a man has a wayward and rebellious son who is not listening to the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have disciplined him, does not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gate of his city, and shall say to the elders of his city, This son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He is not listening to our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst, and let all Israel hear and fear.
Amen. Amen. Okay, hold on. Where did you stop?
21.
But what verse? Yeah, I thought so. We didn't quite get to get two more verses, Tommy, but that's okay. We'll finish it up. So I'm thinking, wait a minute, we didn't get this all the way down. And when a man has committed a sin worthy of death, then he shall be put to death, and you shall hang him on a tree, and let his body not remain overnight on the tree. For you shall certainly bury him the same day. For he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, so that you do not defile the land, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. Amen. All right, now. Good job by all the readers. Thank you very much. Excellent. We can clap for that. Some of you that are watching are like, why does he put away that other scriptures? Well, because it's the newer version, and my brain thinks in the older version, so I bring mine up for that, okay? I got all kinds of notes to read from today. All right, the traditional closing blessing. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natah betochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh your Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. Okay. Let me just remind everybody about the announcements real quick. So, we do have a lost and found in the back of the room by the registration desk. We also have, you can go to the in Pritchell Hall, which is the main building here on property. You could always go to their check-in desk, their registration desk there to check for things. Also, we do need some volunteers for transport for people that need rides back to the airport on Tuesday, okay? So they're going to need rides when this is all over. And so please let Stacia know if you can do those things. All right, also then today in the afternoon, after lunch, we're going to have the first of the two Up to the Challenge teachings. Come ready to learn, to be torn right open and stepped on, and no, I'm kidding. We're going to deal with some stuff today, okay? You guys up? That's why it's called Up to the Challenge. Are you ready to deal with your stuff? We're going to deal with some stuff today, all right? Today and on Sunday. Okay, and then after that, there'll be a dance class here. Okay, we may end up needing to move some more chairs around, but Sarah Beth is going to lead us in whoever wants to in a dance class. We're mostly going to make sure that you know the dances, those 4 songs that we usually do during services, so that if you don't know them, you can come here and learn them, so you'll be ready to be able to do them tomorrow at services. Okay. And I think that's going to cover it. And of course, tonight after supper, we have our open Midrash, which means that you can come here and we'll take almost any question. It doesn't mean I'll answer it, but we'll take any question. I should have just thrown that little caveat out there. You can ask anything you want. I just may not answer it. Okay. But it's more of a discussion. We're going to try to get other people to be able to respond and try to interact a little bit. Okay. So here we are. We're covering day 3, chapters 15 through 21. If you have comments or questions, the routine is you come up here, you sit in the front row. Over here on my right, your left. And if you're on live stream, we've got Kurt and Rob manning the desk over there, okay, for the live stream, comments and questions. And by the way, for all those that are getting confused, there is Kurt, K-U-R-T, sitting at the desk here, and then we have Kirk, who was over here at the camera before, okay, K-I-R-K. All right, so don't get those things confused. All right, I confuse them a lot when I try to say them quickly, but it's Kurt and Kirk. Anyway, so Kurt Meyer is over on the desk here. He's our shamash, and he's sitting there with Rob Wyatt helping with the adminning of the live stream. All right. So, again, here are the rules. Rule number 1, we try to, well, it's not really rules, there's the guidances. We'd like to try to go somewhat chronologically because, after all, the story and the things that are happening make more sense if we do them in order. And certainly, there's a good possibility that something that's happening later might have been based on something that happened earlier, so we have to make sure that we have that foundation first. So we'll start with comments or questions from chapter 15 as we work towards 21. And so, does anybody have one for chapter 15? Okay, Mr. Steve, go ahead. All right, and you could take it out of the stand and just hold it.
All right, let's see here. I'm going to have 15 and 3. It says, I missed that first word, but I'm going to skip the 4 in there. It says it should require of you, but your hand is released whatever is owed by your brother. And I think a lot of us only figure financially, but we should look at emotionally indebtedness, that if our brother has wronged us, we seem to carry that and not release it, and we still expect to have a relationship with our Father, but that, I think, hinders us being able to go forward, and unless we're able to deal with those kinds of hurts.
Amen. Okay. All right. So let's understand something when it comes to this stuff. I mean, there's verses say neither a lender nor borrower be, and all those other kind of things. If you're going to lend or deal with your brother, now remember, this is talking about your brother. Okay, there's 2 different categories. Those inside the camp, those outside the camp. Those inside the camp are your brothers and your sisters. Those outside the camp are the nations. Okay, they're not evil and awful and like we're like cultishly hiding from them. They're just people. Yahweh has not poked them and disturbed them and woke them up yet. Hopefully everybody at some point ends up in the camp, and the camp takes over and covers the whole earth. That's what you end up with in Revelation 21, okay? But in the meantime, there is two groups of people on the planet. It's not racial, it's not by color, it's not by whatever. It's by, are you covenanted or not? Okay? And we treat people inside the camp differently, not differently in a prejudicial way, but differently in these are people that have agreed to the same set of rules, the same set of understandings, the same authority structure. Okay? And he's telling you with your brother, if you're going to lend out anything, I would do so not expecting it back. Okay? That way you will not have to worry about if you had any of your feelings outside of your bag to be stepped on. Because anybody willing to raise their hand and say they've had a relationship ruined over something that was borrowed and not returned? Either because you're the one who borrowed it and didn't return it, or the other way around. I mean, that'll wreck a relationship real fast. So he doesn't want us, the Father doesn't want us to just, because of that fear of that problem, not to be generous, not to be willing to give to your brother, okay? But he does set it up so there's a period of time where if he doesn't return it by then, you release it, okay? And this is an important concept. That's why we talk about own it, fix it, release it, kind of when we're dealing with our stuff. This releasing is the biggest problem. We don't release very well. And then we end up with stress and distress and depression and anxiety and health issues because we don't let things go. And Yah's system is all about letting things go. Of course, you got to own it first, fix it, do what you need to do, repent of it, etc. But then you got to let it go. And so same thing here with the creditor situation. Every creditor to release what he has loaned to his neighbor, he does not require it of his neighbor or his brother because it is called the release of Yahweh. So it's talking about the Shemitah, the every end of 7 years. All right? Of course, to a foreigner, you could require it. They're not under the same, remember, the law is for who? Those who are covenanted and those who are thinking about covenanting, the ger, the proselyte. One law for all. And so let's just kind of keep that in mind. So this is an important thing. I thank you, Steve, for bringing that up, because I think that a lot of times we end up with that problem. Look, if we as a ministry have benefited you in a situation, not benevolently, but where you said that, hey, I need some help short term and I'll give it back, I would say more than half of those people never do. And that's shameful. So if you're listening, shame on all of you. Do I remember who and what? No, I've released it. But I know this happens a lot, but I don't track it that well. So people think, I'm going to just go get some. He's not going to track it. He's going to track it. What do you worry about me for? You guys are dumb if you're thinking that way. Rabbi just said he doesn't track it. I could just, I'm not the one to worry about. If you take something from the ministry and somehow you don't pay it back, he'll give it back if he wants to replenish the supplies. I'm not worried about that. But what about you? Are you worried about the fact that you've just blown your integrity? You've possibly broken the commandment about stealing. You've possibly broken the one about making a vow or making a commitment. These put you in a bad place with your Creator, not with me. So that's part of what he's trying to tell you is don't let people in the situation you're dealing with don't get in a bad situation on the horizontal. Let them worry about their vertical problem. If you get ripped off, Abba can repay it. It's not a problem at all. Okay? Give you an example. This is not exactly directly correlated here, but I think it kind of could work. We got a check from a lady from the UK. And she mailed it across the seas and everything. It was for $1,000. This is many years ago. But it was on I guess a set of checks that she had ordered. And on the checks, on the bottom of the checks, it had a date for when the checks were printed, meaning like when she ordered the batch of checks. Not in the upper left-hand side or right-hand side, where we always write the date on the check, the upper right-hand corner. No, this was just a pre-printed on the checks little date thing. Well, the bank I brought it to would not cash it because they said it was over a year old. I said, no, look at the date she wrote on the top of the check. It was like 3 weeks ago because it was mailed across. They said, oh, we can't do anything with it. And I said to the bank person, I said, well, the way these things tend to work is that when that kind of thing happens, the person generally doesn't replace it. But then I just let it go. Okay, I knew, and the bank wouldn't cash it. So I went home. We actually were fairly broke at the time as a ministry, and my wife was a little bit concerned. I said, don't worry about it. If Yah wants us to have that $1,000, we'll have it. Well, wouldn't you know, that day or the next day, there was a person who had been donating to us on a regular basis, sent us $1,000, which is more than they normally sent. And it said in the memo, my wife said, send you the $1,000, you'd know what it's for. The Ruach had just inspired her to send that extra money, and she didn't know why either. But see, he decided to replenish the money. Why would you worry about that stuff? So if you're going to relent to your brother, just know that you're not requiring of him. If he doesn't pay it back in that reasonable amount of time, don't worry about it. We've got people, many people who said to us, you know what, I'll pay you when I get my taxes, or I'll pay you, can you help me out going to a feast? And we help a lot of people come to the feast. But a lot of it's benevolence. That's not something we would ever ask back for. But some people ask, could we help them across just a short period of time? I would say, again, 60 to 70% of that never gets paid. But we do it anyway, because we want you to be here, and we want to help. And we're hopeful that you'll have integrity. And some of them have real life situations. This is a lesson to all of you. That comes up, and there's a real reason they can't pay, not just because they're trying not to. And they don't even have enough integrity to overcome their pride to call me and say, I really did want to pay. I'm struggling. Can I get more time or something like that? And that's shameful too. Stop being so prideful. Life happens. Or maybe you did some dumb things. Well, admit those things too. I did some dumb things. Please forgive me. I still want to try and pay this back. I don't know what to do, but I didn't forget about you. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I'm not just talking about with the ministry. I'm talking about with each other. Overcome the pride. Overcome all of that stuff and be able to go to your brother and say, look, I'm sorry. I know I have something I owe you. And all those people that I've lent books over the years that never gave them back, I hope you're enjoying them. At least get something out of them. I hope it's not just sitting on a shelf. Because I went through my library the other day as I was moving between houses and new properties and everything. I started unloading on the shelves, and I'm missing a bunch of stuff. And I know that I lent a bunch of them out, never to see them again. Okay? Only thing that frustrates me is I can't remember the titles on some of them so I can get them again. I'm not worried about the cost of them and those kind of things. But just understand, this is a little lesson about these things. It's like a little verse about it, but I think it's an important lesson because I know there's a bunch of people that to this day are still not talking to each other over something small that was borrowed and never given back. And they're mad not just because it wasn't given back, but because the other person at least could have had the courtesy to acknowledge that they took it, that they have it, and that for whatever reason, maybe they lost it. Maybe they, destroyed it in some way and it got ruined in the laundry or fell into, a puddle and they were walking outside and got, whatever it is, right? At least admit it and be honest with your brother and have a relation. This is all a relational stuff. I didn't know we were going to go all there just from what Steve said, but I think that was important, okay? I really do think that was important. And that's where we have to overcome it's not just a pride thing, it's a fear. Well, I'm afraid my brother's going to blast me. Well, maybe he will and maybe he won't, but that's on him. Okay, you are primarily responsible for all aspects of your life. They're responsible for all aspects of their life. You must do the right thing because it's the right thing, not because of what the other person's going to respond. I'll say it again. You got to do the right thing because it's the right thing. People have told me when I went to go do something that I knew was the right thing, well, they're not going to appreciate it, or that's not going to fix anything. I said, I don't care. It's the right thing. Do it anyway. All right? I had a guy at work many years ago in Florida, and he pulled such a wrong, jerk, whatever thing on me, but you know what? It caused me to pop my cork. And I did. The next day, I went to him and I said, I'm still not happy about what happened, but I need to apologize. I shouldn't have lost my temper. Okay? Doesn't matter what the other person did. You're still responsible for you. Okay? Now, if you're the other side of it and your brother comes to you with some good or lame excuse about the stuff you lent them, you've got to do the right thing and be able to handle that. Their journey's their journey, yours is yours. And at some point, you got to let this stuff go. Amen? Amen. Okay, let's go. Next question. Okay, James.
Yeah, he got my verse 3, but going back to verse 1, talking about every 7 years, we're supposed to forgive the debts and everything. We don't know exactly when the 7-year marker is, so how do we observe this without knowing that?
Okay, this kind of thing is going to be observed the way I kind of described it in this little discussion, not so much in the literal sense where we're looking for a year of release. We don't have two things. We don't have the corporate Israel as a nation together. Okay, these laws are, we have individual laws, okay, where you eat certain ways and you keep certain times and do certain things that are for individuals, but also some things are nationally based. So as a nation, the nation would have declared the year of release. Okay? So this is not one of those. I've had people tell me they're going to go to the bank after 7 years and tell them they have to release their mortgage. You can try. Just make sure that you film it. I want to see what happens. Okay. Just Marco Polo that stuff. We'll all laugh. It'll be great. Okay. This is a Jewish bank. They are not going to let you go. All right? Because they're not going to let anybody go who's not at least Jewish if they're going to let anybody go. All right? Because they see this as their brothers. It's a rule about you and your brothers. And it is, to a certain degree. That's exactly what it is. Okay, so the two things we don't have is we really don't know when we are in the Shemitah. I know this guy, Joe Dumont up in Canada thinks he knows. And, you've got, what's his face? What's the guy's name with the, who? Jonathan Kahn, right? He thinks he knows, and we got a couple of guys out there think they know. I don't know if they're right or wrong. All I know is that I've done the math, other people have done the math, and nobody knows. Okay, they're all guessing. And they'll say, well, I've got all these historic events that seem to line up, and the key word is seem to line up. But we don't know, all right? We really don't know. And so what you should be doing is what I said earlier, which is when you lend something, be ready to leave it alone. Let it go. Okay? So I generally tell people when I lend them money, and I do, I lend people money sometimes, I tell them this: I will not chase you down. It's all on you now. The integrity, the guilt, whatever, it's on you. Your obligation. Okay? I hate chasing people down for debts. Hate it. Okay? And so when we lend to people, and we do, I hate lending. Why? Because it's going to mean when you don't pay or you have something goes on, I have to come and get it. And I don't want to do that. So I generally leave it alone, and the person thinking, oh, they forgot about it, you forgot about it, everybody forgot about it. No. He didn't forget about it. All right? Even though every now and then Tony Tanakh says, forget about it. You need to forget about it. You need to release it, okay? But if you're the one who borrowed, that's always going to be on you. Amen? All right, so we got that. Okay, next question. Chapter 15. All right, come on up, Janet.
I'm too short.
No, take it out.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. I have a question, but I have a follow-up question from what you just said. So if you're actually lending a service, providing a service to somebody, let's say you make crafts and you sell something to somebody, they're not really borrowing money, but they haven't paid you back. Would that be a different set
I'm
of
saying
rules?
if anybody owes you on any level, okay, either you lent them something or you gave them something where they said they would pay for it later.
Okay, it's the same.
Okay, if they owe you, that's still on them. But look, before you say yes to letting them owe you, you need to be okay with it never coming back. Let me make that as clear as I can. Before you say yes to someone who says, can I pay you next week, you need to be okay with it never getting paid. If that's not the case, don't say yes. All right, can I pay you next week? No. Unless you're okay with it never coming back. You have to be okay with that. Now, before you ask somebody to do that, especially if you have a relationship with them, you need to know you are on the brink of ruining your relationship. That's all in your hands right there. You pay it back, no problem. You don't, you're about to ruin a relationship. And you know that. You've had that happen. Almost all of you have either had it happen to you or you've seen it happen to people that you're close to. You've seen relationships get ruined by that. So before you go, I want that, because you know what it is? Your lust of the eyes and your desires. You want whatever it is so bad, you don't have the patience to wait. You're going to miss out on something, whatever. So you go, well, I can, and you're thinking in your head, somehow I'll make this work next week or the week after. The next thing you know, 5 months go by and now you're embarrassed. Now you start avoiding the person. Now the relationship starts to really get damaged. Don't owe anybody anything unless you're actually going to pay it back, or unless you're also willing to humble yourself if you struggle, to go to them and say, I'm sorry. I thought I could do this, but I'm struggling. Otherwise, you will wreck a relationship. All right.
Okay, so my question was chapter 15:11.
Yes.
When it says, because the poor one does not cease from the land, and so and so. So I was thinking, is this referring to people who maybe cannot work and they need benevolence, whether because they have disabilities or something? Because we're supposed to do our best, not work and provide for our needs. And I know emergency happens, and sometimes you have a need and you need help. So is this referring to just when it says that the poor will never cease in your land?
Okay, so you got to connect this to verse 4. Okay, so verse 4 actually says the opposite. It says, there should be no poor among you. All right? Yeah. So what he's saying is there shouldn't be any poor, for Yahweh does greatly bless you in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess. But this says in verse 5, only if you diligently obey, which he knows you're not going to do. There will be enough among you that will not do that. So because of that, the poor does not cease from the land. And also because he allows that so that we can learn generosity, compassion, outgoing concern. We look towards the needs of others, okay? So there will always be those, that's why he says don't glean the corners of the field, all right? The things like that are designed so that we learn to be thinking of others, providing for others. So there'll be those that are, for whatever reason, unable to take care of themselves, temporarily or long term. Somebody may have a temporary problem. Some people may have a permanent problem, maybe a handicap of some sort, okay? Maybe they were doing okay and they got injured. Maybe they were born a certain way. Whatever it is, okay? Like when, Ruth shows up, and her mother-in-law doesn't have anything, or the land that her husband had is already pretty much destroyed, that little piece of property she gets to use. And so she's going and gleaning in Boaz's field. See, the poor exist to help us to learn that generosity. Okay? So, because somebody may read this and going, wow, in the same chapter he said there shouldn't be any poor, but yet the poor is always there. The poor is there for two reasons. One is because we're not diligently obeying the voice. If we did, there wouldn't be any poor. And also so that we could learn all those lessons. Amen? Amen. Good questions. Okay. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, something I got out of there shouldn't be any poor is amongst your brethren is because if they're poor, you should take them in and help them so they're not poor anymore.
That also could work. Okay, we could also have that be a piece of this. All right? Okay, Steve?
I wanted to add on to that about what...
Hey, you know what? Tilt the stand up just a little bit, my microphone stand. Just tilt it.
This?
Yes, just tilt it a little bit up, and then you can lay the mic on the stand. That's perfect, right? Like that. And we'll just lay the mic down on that little lip there. It'll be easier.
I just wanted to add on to what she had said. This is what I like to do for the feast. And I'm not trying to boast myself, but how handling the poor. I know that Abba's blessed me maybe more than my brother. So what I like to do is I come and now everybody's going to know is somehow every time I find somebody that actually has a need. And I don't mind, so I like to bless them. If it's $5, if it's $500, that's not the point. But I know that there's always going to be need. And Abba's blessed me, so how could I come not hoping to bless somebody else because he's taking.
Amen. Amen. And look, let me talk to all of you from either side of this. If you are receiving it, you need to be those that are singing praises to Abba for having people that would take care of you and asking, how can you pay back? Not pay back the person that gave you, pay it forward to somebody else. Do something for some. Look, you can pay without money. You can pay by, taking out of your time that you want to do what you want to do and go sit and help somebody with something they need to do. We do have people here that are blind, that are handicapped, that are in wheelchairs. Maybe you could take a turn sitting with them. Maybe you could take time wheeling them around. Maybe you could take time. Notice the people that are off by themselves that maybe aren't getting attention. Go be generous with something that costs you no money. Okay? See, I used to tell this story, but it's very true, and I think it applies here. We have this sort of reaping and sowing mentality in a wrong way. Okay? It's a little bent and twisted. What I mean is this. Years ago, when we used to carry the scriptures, we used to actually put them out on the table at services for free. We had tapes of the teachings, audio tapes, back before CDs, and we had the scriptures, some of the soft-covered ones, and nothing was for sale, and they didn't have a suggested donation. That's still selling. Everybody out there in line on YouTube somewhere listening, all you ministries, stop being hypocrites. A suggested donation is selling. All right? Because people would ask, well, how much are they? I said, they don't have a price today. But how much do they cost? I don't know today. That was my answer. Don't ask me on Shabbat. We had them out. Now, we don't do that now, but back then, that was part of our ministry. We put scriptures out, and some people took them, some people didn't, and but they were free. And they said, well, but I want to pay something. So you can put whatever you want in the box, but you're not buying it. That's a donation. I said, and I'm not giving you a price. They're out here for those who need them. Okay, so one day, lady came by with her family, and one of the older teenagers wanted the scriptures. I didn't have any on the table. It was after services. They didn't have any money at the time to pay for it. I went to the car, took one out, handed it to her, and she left. And my wife, at the time, basically, she goes, well, they're never going to come back. We'll never see them again or whatever. I said, so? That's not why I gave it away. See, I try to give away as much as I can, knowing that the reaping and sowing thing does work. But here's the caveat where you guys get it all screwed up. You want to reap exactly where and how you sowed. So if you sow money, you're expecting money back. That's not the way it works. You sow what you have, you reap what you need. I'll say that again. You sow what you have, you reap what you need. So if you have time, you can sow time. You may need money, you may reap money. Somebody might generously help you with some financial need because you're sowing what you have. Does that make sense? Because I don't know if it's an American thing or just a modern day thing, but we'll sow a bunch of stuff and then we'll just sit over it looking at it like, all right, come on. Now you got about 18 feet of harvest behind you. But oh no, you don't want to look over there. I want to reap that. I sowed it right there. This is how dumb we are. Okay? And I'm saying that because I is one, okay? But this is how dumb we are. But I've learned over time to just sow what I have. He knows what you need, so you're not going to reap exactly what you sowed. You're going to reap what you need. Make sense? Okay? So just keep that in mind as we're doing all these things. So some of you are thinking, when what Steve said, well, Steve comes here, he's done his second tithe. He said, you've heard him say many times, he's a diligent tither, which means that because of the money that he makes, he probably has more money than he needs for this week. And some of you have gone out to dinner and are willing to take others and pay the check and everything. The first feast I ever went to, it blew my mind. I was with about 20 people at a restaurant, and when the check came, $100 bills came flying out. People were fighting to pay the check. I'd never seen anything like it. But they had second tithe. The group I was with at that time, all were second tithers. So they all had, and most of them were from New York, so they were making $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year, which is not a lot of money when you consider where they were living. Might sound like that. So think of it as compared to like 40,000 in the South or something like that. Okay, 34. It wasn't extremely a lot of money. But then when you're talking about $7,000 for spending a week at Sukkot, that's a lot of money. Or 8,000 or 10,000. So these people were like trying to, I went to breakfast with people who played games to try to sneak to pay the check. Oh, excuse me, I got to use the restroom. They come back and the waitress come by and you go to pay the check. Oh, no, it's already paid. You know? I watched two guys just battle every morning to try to pay the check and try to trick each other to make sure they got it paid. It was hysterical. But it's the opposite of what, normally you see people like all of a sudden looking at the sky when the check comes, you know? Hoping somebody will pay for it. All right? You ever do that group thing where everybody goes out to eat and the people that leave early said, give you some money for the check because everybody's chipping in? And they always say, oh, I gave extra and enough for the tip, and it's always short. Am I right? Everybody gave more, and yet it's short. I know because I was always the last one to leave, and I ended up with a short check. Okay? But you all know what I'm talking about. Especially like when you're in college. Everybody's like, yeah, listen, here's my bill was about this, and your bill, and we just, okay, and I threw more in for the tip, and nobody ever does. Somehow it just never heads up. Okay, so just keep those things in mind. Okay, who's next? Okay, Mark?
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning.
This is going back to the first thing that we were discussing this morning, asking a question for somebody else. That person agreed to lend some money to a person, and they basically gave them a blank check, and the person wrote it out for double the amount that the agreed amount was for. So when that happened, the person, got angry about it and was having difficulty in releasing it, and was just wondering, was she wrong, or were they wrong in that, or can we just release it and be done with it?
Okay. Well, first of all, there's two aspects going on here. First of all, you need to own the fact that that was your fault. You do not give somebody a blank check. You need to own that part. Now, yes, they should not have written it for double, but you were foolish. Look, sometimes you have to pay what's called a stupid tax. Anybody ever paid the stupid tax? Okay. So you need to own that was what you call a stupid tax. And sometimes a stupid tax can cost you a lot of money. Okay? And so, you paid the stupid tax, you end up in trouble. All right. Okay, so, now as far as what the other person did, yes, you also have to release that. But you're all mad. Mostly the person's mad because they realized they were dumb. I gave them a blank check. I shouldn't do it. And then, of course, the person was theoretically their friend. At least they thought they were. And now they feel betrayed and disappointed that a friend would treat them that way. This is why you shouldn't do it. Unless you're okay to think of it as benevolence. All right? It'd be nice if they paid it back. They said they would. But if you need that money, then it shouldn't, money needs to be used in certain ways. Look, I remember I was a commodities broker, okay? Kind of like a stockbroker, but we did, soybeans and wheat and, gold and silver and all that kind of stuff. And we had a guy, he had to have like about $20,000 to open an account, $15,000, $20,000 just to open an account. And a gentleman had put money in, and he lost most of it. And most of them do. Most people lose their money in that stuff. And it's supposed to be what they call risk capital, stuff that you could lose and it's not going to wreck your life. So the guy started basically almost crying to me on the phone, well, that was my whole retirement. I'm thinking, you were going to retire on $15,000? You already had a problem. How long was that going to last you? I said, it's supposed to be risk capital. But I'm saying is we have to understand our finances. You may have more than your brother, but that doesn't mean you have this abundance where you could afford not to have it forever. Think about what you have. Can you afford to never see that money come back? And that's including stuff. You lend somebody a lawnmower. Lawnmower costs money. It doesn't come back or it gets broken and doesn't get fixed. You got to buy a new one. You got to think of the financial ramifications of your choices. Be generous, but be wise. Okay? Be generous, but be wise. I'm just trying to see how many things I can give Manny to write down for his. He keeps grabbing the phone. Okay, got to write that one down too. All right, who's next? All right, live stream, go ahead.
All right, from Michelle Perez, question
15:1 through 12, can this 7-year period also be a shadow of the new Jerusalem within the city?
Well, at that point, we'll all be released from everything. By the time you get to the New Jerusalem, all those things have been pretty well settled.
Okay, from Michael Diaz in 15:9, what is the thought of Belial?
In 15:9, be on guard lest there be a thought of Belial in your heart, saying, the 7th year. In other words, the idea of saying, okay, how can I use this to my best advantage? You know? Well, let's see. It's year 6. You know? Let me go borrow something and get released. So it's one of those things where you're manipulating the system to your best advantage. Okay, what else you got? Is yours on 15, sir? 21? Okay, so we'll make sure to get to you when we get towards there. All right, we can go to 16.
Okay, from Marie in 16:16, it says, aren't single women to do this also?
Okay, so again, this is kind of where we get to like some of the deeper debates that happen from time to time about things like should women wear tzitzit and some of the other things in Scripture. And these are the things that I end up arguing and fighting with people over. I don't know why they want to argue and fight over these things, but look, there's things in, first of all, I don't want to make, I'm trying to think about how far back I want to go. Okay, we'll go all the way back. This is not written to you, it's written for you. That's the first thing. So it wasn't written to you, written to these people that we now get to, quote unquote, join in to the mix that was set up back in these days. Okay, that's number one. Number two, all of your Scripture was written to men. Okay? Nobody was thinking the ladies were reading these Scriptures, and that's why the ladies weren't even counted in these censuses. They were assumed to be not of no value, not of irrelevance. They were assumed to be a part of the man. You were a daughter to your father, or a wife to your husband, or a sister to your brother. Incredibly valued, no less valued than the man, but this is the vertical structure. Okay? And so understand that there's not a single, you see, you're thinking in modern 2019 as a quote unquote emancipated modern woman that you've got all these rights and all this authority and all this sovereignty and all this. That was not the case when this was written. Okay? This was written to men. Even the stuff about women was to men to tell the women. Do we understand that, hopefully? See, you have to read this through the eyes of the people it was written to. Okay? You can't just think of this as a woman today. You're not the same as women were, say, 100 years ago, let alone today being different, okay, than 4,000 years ago. Big difference. So number one, this is written in the context of a time and is written to the men, but also for the women. Now, last piece of I'll give you 3 pieces, right? So it's to them, and it had to do with it being to the men. The third thing, the important thing here is that there are very specific things scripturally that are required by specific people. Some things are for women, some things are for men, some things are for Levites, etc. But that doesn't mean, unless there's a negative command saying not to do it, that it's not also for. Is that clear? There are those that are required to do something, but it may also be for. It applies and could be applied by others. In other words, nothing wrong with doing it. So the requirement was for all the men to come to Jerusalem and keep those 3 feasts. They're called the Shalosh Regalim, or the Chagim, pilgrimage feasts. All right, unleavened bread, Shavuot, and Sukkot. All right? And so, can the ladies go? Of course they could go. A lot of times the whole family went. Matter of fact, you find a verse where, Yosef and Miriam and Yeshua are at a feast. And then they leave, and they forgot him somehow. And then CPS showed up. Hey, neglectful parents. How'd you lose your kid? He's 13, He's considered an adult at this point. All right, so hopefully we're understanding, these things. Okay, so the question that was asked so the answer is yes, the women could go, the single women would go. Okay, but understand that the verse saying is the men need to do it. Okay, this is just like what I teach about tzitzit, and I get a lot of flack for this. Men, you need to be wearing them. Ladies, there's no negative command. You want to wear them, wear them. Don't wear them, don't wear them. You're covered by the man in your life if you have a man in your life that's wearing them. Even if I'm covering you, if you're a single person who we've talked and I'm your covering. That's my opinion. Scripture doesn't mandate it that way. Well, but it says children of Israel. Well, that's B'nai Yisrael. It means sons. Even though some places also just means more than that. Okay, it gets translated that way. So people say, well, then the ladies can eat whatever they want. No, because you're included with the man. Because it says children of Israel shall not eat pork. But you're included with the man. Just like man's tzitzit covers you also. Do you see how that applies? The man eating right doesn't cover you eating dumb. Okay? All right? The man eating right doesn't cover you eating dumb. Okay? He's eating what's food and you're eating what's not food. No. You follow the leadership in the vertical structure. Did that answer that question in a sort of a long-winded way? Sometimes a question I'll use to kind of touch on other things that connect to it, so it's a great opportunity to do that. All right? Okay, so just wanted to make sure that we understand that. Okay, so yes, it says 3 times a year all your males will appear before you. Do you understand what kind of trust level that required? To leave your wife and children if you did, or even if you didn't leave them, you took everybody to leave your farm or your cattle or your crops or whatever it is that you left behind. Now, you would leave the manservants and maidservants or whatever, because a lot of people had those in those days, tending those things, but you had to leave them to go for probably almost a 2-week period of time because you had to travel. And they didn't have cars or planes or buses. And so even a few miles could take a little bit of time with all your stuff packed up on a donkey or on whatever you had, right? And dragging it on a cart or whatever you did. So, yeah, you were gone for a little while. And it was a big deal. And there was a lot of trust that Yahweh would keep what you left behind safe. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more because we're going to deal with something that has to do with the calendar here in chapter 16 as well, which I think is really cool. But anyway, where did that come from? Live stream? Okay, what else did you have? Okay, over here. All right. We're in chapter 16 now. I don't think I missed anything from 15, so we're good.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
Just a quick comment about the tzitzits. My husband has said to me that the times that I forget putting them on, that he's got me covered, and I sort of feel a bit guilty about that at times because I know that I made the decision to wear them.
So then wear them.
And then...
I've not told anybody they shouldn't wear them.
No, but I just feel that at times, I need to be responsible for my decision as well, so... That's
okay, so wear them.
Yeah.
Look, again, there are what we call positive and negative commands. Thou shalt... Of course, we don't speak that way anymore, but you understand what I'm saying? The do this, you are required to do that. Those are the positive commands, and then the don't do. Okay? And sometimes they tell men to do something and tell the women not to do it. Sometimes they tell the women to do something and tell the men not to do it. In this case, it tells the men to do it, in my opinion. It doesn't say to the women they can't do it. All right, so do it. Just make them white with blue. Don't make them rainbow colored and all kinds of other strange things. Okay? All right.
These next 2 questions relate to topics that have been covered. Any extra Sukkot money, is it appropriate to pay bills when it says pay what your heart desire is?
No. Okay, so your Sukkot money should be used. This actually is something that was supposed to be in my announcements, and I'll try to get that into the announcements, especially tomorrow. Okay? Your second tithe has a purpose in chapter 14. It's that you celebrate and enjoy the feast. So what would be appropriate to spend it on? An enjoyable meal? You want to take the children out to something entertaining and have them go out and play and do like laser tag or whatever? I mean, whatever your heart's desire, and enjoying the feast while you're here. Okay? Now, it is also appropriate to use it for certain things that were able to enable you to get here. Okay? If your car was not going to make it, it was okay for the little drives to the store, but not to come 6 hours drive to here. Things. Okay? Somebody that can talk to you without a seatbelt on. So they don't have to worry about getting dizzy, right? While you're trying to spin. Okay, so if you are like you are, well, you need to fly. I mean, a long distance. You know, I've even told your family, you can take your tithe and hold it over so that you can afford an expensive flight here if you don't have enough money in the 1 year. Second tithe is supposed to be only kept for that year, that cycle. Now, I believe, according to Deuteronomy 17, which we didn't get to yet, we will in a minute, that the leadership has authority to make a dispensation, so to speak, for a unique situation like flying from Australia to here, which costs thousands of dollars, and you have 3 or 4 family members, and how are you going to afford that if it's more than your second tithe? Okay? So then I have told your family you could hold some over to the next time. Now, the reason we don't hold it over is because if you did hold it over and you had plenty of it, you'd stop doing it. He wants you to tithe. It's an exercise of trust and of discipline. Okay, so whatever you have excess on Monday should go in the box. Okay, that's where it goes. You don't take it with you. You don't spend it on anything else. You only take with you whatever you need to complete your journey. This is your feast. Take enough money for your gas or whatever it is that you need to have for your expenses to get home out of your second tithe. But the rest of it's got to go in the box. You need to start second tithing the week you get home for the next feast, which is Passover. Is that making sense so far? Okay? So if you have something you want to spend it on, let's be careful that we don't turn it into a blank check like we were talking about when Mark brought it up. Okay, this is not a blank check to just spend it on anything you want. Yes, anything you want, but within a context or framework of enjoying his feast. So you know, we have some people that don't own a lot of more dressy clothes. They don't need it for their life except when they come to services or they come to a feast. So I said, look, save up your second tithe, and when you go out, for each year when you go to a feast, buy yourself one outfit. You know, you're a guy, buy a nice pair of pants, buy a nice shirt. Ladies, buy a dress, skirt, set, whatever you know, and then after a couple of feasts, guess what? You got plenty of them. Okay? I mean, there's lots of things that you can do, but again, you may normally don't go out to a nice restaurant, you know, something where it costs $20 for a dish or something. So go out to a nice restaurant. Treat yourselves to that specialness of saying, I praise my King for giving me a time where I can understand what it feels like to have abundance. Okay? And that's what it's about. The other things are about making sure that you're able to get here. Okay? And so, look, you may have to board an animal. Well, good. Use your second tithe to board the animal. You may have to pay somebody to watch something back at your property. Well, use the second tithe to pay the person to watch something back at your property. Maybe you've got animals that need to be watched. You know, something, maybe cows or goats that need to be milked, whatever it is. If you've got to pay somebody to do it, you can use your second tithe for that during the feast time. From the time you left to the time you get back, okay? Not just for just the days during the feast, because it's enabling you to do this. Is this making all sense? Did I answer your question? Okay? And I thank you for asking it because it was something I was supposed to mention. Okay, some of you are thinking, well, you just want the money in the box. No, I don't. I want you to not have anything in your pocket so that you don't have the temptation not to obey him. I already told you, he's going to put whatever he wants in our box whenever he wants. Okay, I'm not worried about the box. I'm worried about you. Okay? You need to do this because otherwise you won't. Let's say you're a single person, you make $70,000 a year, you got a great job. What are you going to spend $7,000 in a year on fees? You don't need that much money. You keep that over for 1 or 2 years, you're going to have so much money that you don't know what to do. You're not going to tithe. You're going to stop doing what you're supposed to do. This is kind of the Deuteronomy, 8, when we were talking about, when you've eaten and you're satisfied, and you create all this wealth, and then you get all fat and full of yourself and comfortable, and then you slack off. Which is why we say that blessing after meals to say, I've eaten and I'm satisfied, and I'm going to pause and recognize that this is all to bring your glory and honor, more glory and honor, and to help establish the covenant. Amen? Amen. Good question.
Okay, the second relates to what you were saying. Sometimes you just got to do the right thing. I had a situation this year where there was an altercation and someone got their nose out of bent, and even though it wasn't fully my fault, I apologised. And there's been times I've known that if I'm going to say something, everything's going to blow up. So what do you suggest? If you're trying to do the right thing, you would like to apologise, but you know things are just not going to turn out in
Okay,
a good
hold on.
situation.
Okay, so you're confusing two things. It actually came out in your sentence. You would like to. Okay, doing the right thing doesn't always have to do with what you would like to. Okay, I would like to apologize, but if it's going to make things worse or blow up, then it's not the right thing to do. At that moment, you may have to wait for a better time. You may have to wait for a better situation. So be careful of that emotional drive saying, I want to, I would like to. I feel like, that feeling-driven thing. Doing the right thing shouldn't be a feeling-driven thing. That way you can be in a more rational moment to say, well, but I don't want to make it worse either, because that would not be, quote unquote, the right thing. So then you may call someone like me for wisdom and say, how do I handle this? I want to apologize, but I don't want to reawaken and trigger the whole thing all over again. Does that make sense? That's why you seek counsel, and that's why you need counsel. Now, the second thing that's important with all this, as you're looking at it, is recognize that if you are going to do the right thing, when you go to do it, do not have any agenda or requirement on what the other person's response has to be. Because you might go and apologize, and it may blow up in your face. And then you say, well, I'm sorry, I apologize, or I don't apologize, I take it back. No, you should just say there, take it, whatever it is. You should think it through before you go, though, but you're emotional, so you go and you want to apologize. But do it knowing full well that how do I want to say this? Whenever you do whatever you do, pause for a second and ask yourself, what is the likely response? What is the likely result? See, I'm red. I'm always thinking about the result. But most of you who are not red or don't have your red activated very much aren't driven by the result. So you're just doing what you're doing for other reasons, not worried or concerned, is it going to get the result that I want? Okay? So apologizing will get you the result you want about how you feel, but it's not going to necessarily always get the result based on them. And you have to think that through, knowing who it is, how bad the situation is, what is the likely response. Because most of the time, if we think about it, we're really not surprised by the response. It happens sometimes, where a person just responds in a way you're like, oh my gosh, I'd never expected that. But most of the time, if you really think about it, you're not surprised. You're not happy because you had hoped it would have been different, but you're not surprised. And this is where we have to think things through from a results basis. If you're not in a heated moment, if you and I had a little problem and now we're back home and we're separate and then we're thinking about, should I go to the person, should I apologize? Now I can start thinking about what can I do and what result would that get? And is that result going to be what I'm looking for? All right? And if the answer is no, then you may want to seek counsel because maybe you need a third person involved to help make sure that it goes well. Okay, amen. Okay, who's next? Are we in chapter 16 still? Okay. Ben, you have 16? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Before we get too far.
Right up to your mouth.
All right, I'd just like to touch on the appropriate uses of the second tithe money again real quick before we get away from it. But
it also has to stay there. He started talking like this. No, it's got to stay over there.
All right, like in our situation, I don't have enough vacation days to stay here for the entire duration, but we really wanted to. Would it be appropriate to replace lost wages while you're gone with second tithe?
I would say if that's going to, I think first of all you should have counsel. Okay, counsel from the point of view of the reason that you need the wages is it because that you really just don't have any ability to pay for it? Is it because you have a budgeting problem and you spend your money foolishly? I mean, there are things that are that way. But if you were in a don't take this as licenses to run off. But under some circumstances, I would say yes. If you were going to miss 5 days of work and you can't afford to miss 5 days of work and they're not going to pay you, that you could use some of that tithe to offset that loss, I would say that probably is fine. Okay? Because after all, in the days that we're talking about in Scripture, and we're going to see this in chapter 16 actually, and I'll read it to you because it says it in verse 13. It says that you're going to go and keep Sukkot after you've ingathered and threshed and done your wine pressing. In other words, those people there is no more work for them to do. They now have their harvest. They can turn that into the funds they need or they bring what they have. So they're not needing anything. We don't live in that kind of society. So a lot of us get a week or 2 weeks vacation. Most people get at some point 2 weeks vacation. Although I had one person, I've said this as a joke, but it's not a joke, used to say to me, well, my family goes to Disney every summer for a week. So I only get 2 weeks vacation. I said, look, the mouse doesn't need your money, okay? I promise you, he'll be just fine without your money. And why you would ever go to Disney in the summer, I don't know. Okay, I lived in Orlando. That's not fun. Okay, last thing you want to do is stand on long lines in 90% humidity and 90-degree weather. Not a good thing. But if you have 2 weeks vacation, that pretty much covers most of your feasts. I mean, you pretty much can cover what you need. So let's say you're a day or two short of what you can cover. Sure, I think that would be fine. But just make sure that we're just trying to protect the money for what it was designed to do. Don't be overly, free with that second tithe to just use it for anything, okay? All right, but again, if you do have a financial thing, you may want to talk to somebody just to say, hey, maybe you need to be aiming a little higher in your career. Maybe there's some leaks in your budget you need to work on, and we will have more classes on finances, all right? Okay, Janet? Still in 16.
Just a follow-up question about the second tithe, because I want to make it right and get a good result. Should we, since we have 3 feasts, should we kind of divide up the amount to budget?
Theoretically, you should be tithing from after Sukkot to afford Passover. But don't just, like at the end of Passover, just whatever's excess. Save up what you need to get to Shavuot and then get to Sukkot. And then finally, whatever's still left, that would go. By the way, all of you on the live stream, if you didn't spend anything to go anywhere, but you still should be second tithing, well, then you need to be hitting that button and then sending that into, or whatever whatever your group is that you work with, because you still need to do this even if you didn't go anywhere. You're still supposed to second tithe, and you're still supposed to empty your hands of it at the end and start again. Okay? And that's just the way the system works. Okay.
Chapter 16, verse 11, 14, and 15, it talks about rejoicing before Elohim.
Yep.
And it caught my attention, the 15th, it says, and you shall be only rejoicing. And so I was thinking about, obviously being here with the family, rejoicing, but also could that mean to put aside any worries or anything that is keeping your mind from being, with a good attitude,
Yes.
spirit with everybody here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, think about it. This is just like Shabbat, is that once a week, you hear me say this every week on Shabbat, that we have this time to put aside the cares of the world, the concerns of the world, all the things that are happening, all the issues, and having that oasis of space of time between us and our Creator to take the breath, be restored, be refreshed. Well, this is a week-long version of that. Okay, we should be tasting that sense of the millennium, that sense of what's coming when His authority is ruling in all things. And so, yes, try to put all that stuff behind it. It'll still be there later if you still want to deal with it, but it's not going anywhere unless you decide to finally release it, but it could still be there later. Try to release all that. But also understand the second tithe, which we were also talking about, is so that you don't, if you came here with no money and broke, and then how are you going to rejoice? It's harder. But He commands us then to put the second tithe. Some of you didn't do this right for a while, and I know I've met some of you who came up to me and you were so excited to finally be able to afford to come because you finally did the second tithe. And so I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but there are some of you here that you're like, this actually works. I feel really good. I didn't have to ask for any help. I'm here because I did what He said, and I was able to afford to be here. Because that's the whole point. It's for you, okay? So that you can rejoice while you're here. Excellent. Next. Did you have something in 16? Well, come on up then. Okay, this is Raymond. Raymond Romlow leads a group in Wisconsin that's part of the MTOI umbrella. Okay?
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
All right, so just since we're in 16, something that comes up at the head of the chapter, it's kind of an opportunity to see something that if we recognize it here, it can help us keep things straight elsewhere. We know that when when the children of Israel were brought out of Mitzrayim was not at the beginning of the month. It was at the middle of the month. And yet in this verse it says, regarding the Chodesh of Aviv, and that it was in the Chodesh of Aviv that Yah, your Elohim, brought you out. So I know the ISR loves to put new moon there.
The new one does. Mine says month, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so most people now are using the 2009, and they have to deal with those changes, and maybe it's the first version they've seen, too.
It can be, yes.
And it can kind of screw you up if every place that you're reading that, you're thinking literally new moon, as in like that first 1 to 3 days of the month that the moon is dark, or however you're looking at new moon. It really, the vast majority of places that the ISR says new moon, it does not mean Rosh Chodesh. It just means, it just in the Hebrew there says Chodesh. And so it's helpful to understand that what we're dealing with, most of those mentions is month, not literally the new moon.
Correct. Excellent point. Thank you. So again, we talked about this briefly on one of the other studies, that there are idiomatic phrases and things that in Hebrew the Jews would understand. The Israelites going back to this time would have understood. So when it talks about guarding the Chodesh of Aviv, or the month of Aviv, it's talking about spring. Okay, it's not necessarily telling you to go out and look for the barley. And so just so that we're clear about that, because that is in my notes, so thank you, Raymond, for bringing it up. I was going to get to that if nobody brought it up, is that in verse 1, this links to Exodus chapter 9. Okay, I just want to, because, you got guys like Michael Rood and Nehemiah Gordon that are all obsessed about these things, and they don't seem to understand the way that this actually plays out in the Scripture. So if you go to Exodus chapter 9, let me just get there real quick. Okay, in chapter 9 and in verse, 31. Okay? Now, bear in mind that this is talking about the hail. Okay, in verse 28 it says, "Pray to Yahweh, for there has been enough of the thunder and the hail of Elohim, and I am letting you go so that you stay no longer." And then Moses says, "As soon as I get out of the city, let me spread out my hands, and let the thunder cease and the hail be no more." So this is the hail. Okay, and now it says in verse 31 that the flax and the barley were smitten by the hail, for the barley was in the head, or aviv, and the flax was in bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not smitten, for they were later crops. Okay? So we have very clearly that the barley, which is what is being used for the first fruits offering during unleavened bread, has been smitten by the hail. Well, in case you think maybe that wasn't everything, then we can go to verse 15 of chapter 10, where it says that the locusts, they covered the surface of all the land so that the land was darkened, and they ate every plant of the land and all the fruit of the trees and all that the hail had left. And no greenness was left on the trees or the plants in the field or anything. All right. Now, unless you believe, and I guess you can, that the plagues took over a year in some way, there was nothing green when they left. Can we agree to that? The hail destroyed and the locusts ate, and that was it. So, because there are people that, and these guys, Rudin and Gordon will go and point to, well, the first place that we see the word Aviv is in Exodus chapter 9. And they're right. That's where it first appears. But there's not a single verse that tells you to go look for it. Well, they'll go to Deuteronomy when it says, guard the month of Aviv. Okay, that's what ties us back to Deuteronomy 16. All right, so guard the month. Well, what does it mean to guard it? It says, they didn't have phones and watches and calendars on their wall and computers to look things up. They actually kept time with sundials and markings. Maybe they would mark on something. They had to. That's why the Rosh Chodesh command is there, so that every month you pause and you say, I know what month it is, so that you know where you are in the calendar, so you know what's coming up and when it's coming up. Does that make sense? Are we good? All right? So no, there is no instruction here to go look for barley in a certain state of development. By the way, how many of you are farmers that have ever grown crops? Okay. So in your own farm and or in the place where you live, meaning the whole state or region where you live, does all of the crops come ripe at the same time? No? Wow. I mean, on the same day, they're not all ripe? Could it take maybe even as much as 2 or 3 weeks for it all to be ripe or hit the same level of maturity? Okay? So this whole idea of looking for the Aviv is a little bit tricky. Are you looking for the very first ones that are in the bud or that have hit this state of, being Aviv? How much of it has to be Aviv? It has to be Aviv enough for you, really all of it, so they can bring the offering by the time they actually bring it. So they acknowledge that 14 days later, sometime after the beginning of Passover, there's going to be this first fruits offering. All right, so then it has to be Aviv by then, because then they can start to eat it after that. Okay. All right? So let's just make sure that we're paying attention that there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's got a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of charisma behind it where the people are passionately throwing it out there. I don't think it's that scriptural. Now remember, I'm coming from a Jewish background. I didn't come from the I don't know anything and now I'm going to think I know more than everybody that ever existed background. But that's what happens, right? You get yourself a blue letter Bible, you get a little bit of an interlinear, you dig out some stuff, and you think you understand things. Do you understand that there's a lot of idiomatic phrases in your language that you speak right now? Okay? I had a guy come up to me one time saying, I'm as lost as a ball in the tall grass. What? It was a southern thing, I guess. Listening to you rabbis like trying to drink out of a fire hose. When I first heard that, I thought that was cool until I realized a fire hose would blow your face off. Maybe that's not so cool. I was like, yeah, that's great. I'm blasting it out there. Fire hose, you just rip your whole face right off. All right? So when we say things, we use all of these phrases that mean something. Look, if I told you I was going back to my desk to burn a CD, what would you think I was doing? I was going to take some information off my computer and put it on a disk. If you're old enough, you remember like in the 70s when people had CDs in their banks, you had told somebody in the 70s you're going to burn your CD, they were like, why would you take your money and burn it? Because you kept it in a certificate of deposit, earning interest. See, language changes over time. Okay, I'm going to burn a CD. Go to some places and they're like, what going to set? What's a CD and why would you set it on fire? That's right, it's not a New Age sacrifice. Although I've had some times with my technology where I've almost been willing to do that. Those of you who know me know exactly what. Rabbi's about to offer up his computer as a sin offering because he lost his temper because of that stupid thing. All right, it's a guilt offering. He took a hammer to it. If anybody walks by my office and hears screaming, they know I'm trying to log into something and I can't remember my password. Okay. That's pretty much true. Trust me when I tell you that. See my moods. You had trouble logging into something again, didn't you? Yes, I did. Okay. All right, so hopefully that makes some sense. Now I'm going to mess with your calendar. Since we got some calendar stuff, let me jump in here real quick with some calendar stuff. Okay, so first we have this Aviv thing. So we don't need to go out and look for barley for that. And by the way, it's really funny because in some of the videos, I know people that are farmers that have seen what they've held up and said, first of all, in some of the videos, they're not even holding up barley. In some of the other videos, it's definitely not Aviv. People are not farmers who are even knowing what they're doing, okay? So let's just be careful with that. Now, for those of you that have your own calendar that aren't using the halal calendar, all of you need to leave right now. No. Look, one of the things that happens when you come into this is that you recognize that you've been lied to. Yes or no? Yes. Okay, so you then end up with a strong desire to be right. I understand that. And that's why I made a teaching called Making the Calendar Decision, because I don't think it's that easy to be right sometimes. And being right, when we talked about, like when Lisa wanted to say, well, if I apologize, it might blow up in my face and make things worse. Well, you know what? Being right doesn't always end up being the right decision based on how things are playing out. I'm not saying to do something that you know for sure is wrong. Actually, all of the calendars I've ever heard of have problems. I'm going to tell you this. When people come to me with their calendar, I bring them to Deuteronomy 16 and show them something I know they did not include, probably. Nobody I've ever talked to has ever included this when I've talked to them. Now, that doesn't mean nobody's ever included it, but when I'm talking to them. But, when you're figuring out, well, we need to figure out based on the timing to make sure with the Passover and with the Aviv, and is it the dark moon or the sliver moon or is it based on Israel time or local time or Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the library? Okay? Some of you remember that game. Okay? But there's this verse that we read, verse 13, that you're supposed to do Sukkot for 7 days after the ingathering from your threshing floor and from your wine press. Okay, so does your calendar assure that whatever they were threshing or wine pressing would have been available and finished and able to be done before going to Sukkot? See, I used to have my own calendar. See, some of you think, Rabbi, you just do a Hillel calendar because you don't have your own calendar. I did have my own calendar. When I say my own, meaning the one I thought I figured out was right. And you can ask Uncle Bob, not what it was specifically, but the fact that we did used to keep that calendar back in the day. Okay, he's the only one that's still here since back in those days when we had our ministry, 20 years ago. And so we did that calendar. But in the making the calendar decision, I explained to you why I chose to use Hillel for now, why I thought it was the right decision under the circumstances for now. That being said, though, my calendar understood chapter 16 and verse 13. Because I'll give you an example. I remember being, in those days, at a feast that was being kept, and I was doing the research, and I wanted to know, A, what crops were growing at that time, which ones were going to be harvested when did they come in, and so contacted, looking for like a farmer's almanac type of situation for the land of Israel. Talked to people who live there. Do they know what crops, when they do, what the timing is? Found some old books about the ancient cultures of different areas, and they talked about things like agriculture and industry and those kind of things, and actually had a chart of what crops grew when and when they were harvested. And I have to tell you, it was really funny to see someone sending me a little clip, how you can put a picture in a text. I got a little picture in a text of the cover of one of the Israeli newspapers during the feast, saying, we're in the middle of our great harvest season. It was like one of those great, it was just a positive news thing. Hey, we're having a great harvest right during Sukkot. Should have been finished by then. It wasn't because we were in the first week of September. Trumpets almost ended up in August that year. Hillel's calendar is messed up, but so were most of the other ones too. Just letting you know, because people don't take all the things into account. But we do have Deuteronomy 17 to deal with, and we'll get there in a little bit, and that will help explain how we handle these things. But just to understand it, the next time someone comes at you with a calendar, just ask them how their calendar handles 1613. Does your calendar handle 1613? Because it says to go keep Sukkot after you've ingathered and wine pressed. Ingathered, threshed, and wine pressed. That doesn't mean that the harvest is still out there. They mean if you brought it in, you've threshed it, you've pressed it, you're done. Agreed? Okay. So just so you know, that was part of what I did in choosing how we put the calendar together, to make sure that you should know this already. I use all the pieces in the box. We don't just focus on one piece. We're like one of the only groups that does Passover and Sukkot the same. Most people just focus on Sukkot. You don't hear them doing anything as a retreat, gathering together like it says in 16:16 3 times a year. And of course, Shavuot's the same, but it's a one-day thing. It's a little harder for people to travel around the world just to be someplace for one day. I get that, all right? But it's something we still keep. But why would you not keep unleavened bread the same way as Sukkot? Why is one more? They're both in here as the same. There's 3 of them in here the same. So we've always done the 3. We've not just done the 1. We came out of a church that had done the 2 big ones for a little while, then gave up on the Passover one. Back in the 50s, 60s, they had done both. I think it was Worldwide Church of God had done both for a little while. But then it just started doing just the 1, just Sukkot. So we try to set the example of being in compliance with the instruction. We do both. We keep them both exactly the same. Well, not exactly, you don't eat bread during one of them. But the other aspects are the same, okay? And we don't read Deuteronomy in unleavened bread, we read one of the Gospels. So we're going to see Yeshua's journey. So we usually read Matthew or John or Luke or something. Okay. So that was my quick jump in there with that. Also, since we're talking about calendar, let me throw one more thing in there that's in chapter 16. And in verse 9 it talks about counting 7 weeks for yourself. Begin to count 7 weeks from the time you begin to put the sickle to the grain. Now, notice it didn't say from the time during the holy day or the Sabbath during Passover. And it doesn't say that in Leviticus 23 either. There is nothing except tradition to link starting the 50-day count to anything that has to do with unleavened bread. It just doesn't say. In Leviticus 23, unleavened bread is finished in the discussion, and then it says, and when you come into the land and you reap its harvest, you're going to do this thing with the first fruits, and then you're going to count 50 days. All right? Now that could take you, meaning you could mean that it's not linked to anything except physical harvest. When the harvest comes, then we start counting 50 days. Or it could mean that it's linked to something after unleavened bread. It could mean anything. All we know is what's been being done up to this point. All right? How it's been done up to this point by the Jewish community that we have as a remnant to look at. But understand, the verses don't give us anything that says, and on the Sabbath during unleavened bread, the day after that Sabbath, you're going to start counting, so you always end up on a Sunday. Nor do we have anything that says on the day after the holy day. Because you have two different segments of view in the Jewish community. You have the Sadducees and the Pharisees disagreed on this. Okay? One started with the Sunday after the Sabbath during unleavened bread. The other one started with the day after the holy day, which is the main one that we have now with Hallel, which is why we end up on Sivan 6 as opposed to on a Sunday. And so actually Sivan 6 has been on a Sunday a couple of times lately. I think we get it again this year, okay, coming up. So it does end up that way. Interestingly enough, in Yeshua's day, when he was killed and resurrected, both groups had the same Shavuot. So that's why the verse says in Acts, and they were together of one accord, everybody was on the same calendar. Amen. Yahweh chose the timing so that it would be on a time when everybody would be on the same day. Because if you think about it, the holy day as it came around was Friday, then they couldn't do anything on Shabbat, so it ended up on Sunday. So those who did it the day after the high day couldn't do it Saturday. Those who always did it after the Saturday Shabbat would have done it on Sunday. But it's talking about counting 7 weeks for yourself, count 7 weeks of time. And so these things, okay, are literally counting weeks. But then at the same time, in Leviticus 25, a lot of you have heard me say this, some of you are new. It tells you to count the Shemitah years and the Jubilees by counting seven cycles of 7. Do you know that it's the exact same wording? Sheva Shabbatot. Sheva is 7, Shabbatot, weeks or Sabbaths. See, but you want to read it. This goes back to what Raymond said. Chodesh is like a new moon, the Rosh Chodesh, or Chodesh is just being month. Okay? Well, Shabbatot, is it counting Saturdays or is it counting weeks? Just put that out there for you to think about. Is it talking about literal Saturdays you're counting, or are you counting weeks, 7-day cycles? So that's all in here for you to just kind of stimulate and stir up trouble with. Okay, so we get in there. Because people get mad when I tell them there's more than one calendar in your Bible. Okay, the Shemitah calendar is different. You announce the year of release after atonement in the 7th year. Not at the end, right before Aviv. Some people say, well, you announce it during atonement, but you don't actually start it till Aviv. No. Doesn't work that way. Okay? It never did work that way. All right. So hopefully that works with 16. Anything more on 16? I got one more thing, but you got something for 16?
Well, what I have in 16 kind of leads into 17.
Okay.
And it starts with the appointment of judges.
Okay, so because I wonder why that's important to you.
Just a little.
He has that career. Okay. Let me just cover one thing and then you can get to that one, okay, Pete? Okay, so in chapter 16 and in verse number, where's my notes? 5, okay? There are some people out there that are putting blood on their doorpost still today or slaughtering a lamb in their backyard and all that stuff. This verse is clear. You are not allowed to slaughter the Passover within your gates. Okay? Because I get calls from people who are concerned, Rabbi, in my congregation, they're slaughtering a lamb and they're putting blood on their doorposts. No. They only did that once. They slaughtered the lamb and the doorpost thing was one time. After that, it was done corporately with the Mishkan, with the tent of meeting, and you went to the tabernacle and you did the slaughter. They did that, and then there was no more blood on the doorpost. That was a one-time deal. Okay? No firstborns are ever being at threat of being killed after that one time. All right? So if you know people doing this, take them to 16:5 and say, look, you're not allowed to do that. It says it right. Some sentences and some things are maybe ambiguous. That one's not confusing, I don't think. You are not allowed to do that stuff, okay? That's a negative command. You can't do it. Don't do it. All right, Pete, come up. Something about the judges.
So I was comparing the language in 16:18 to where the judges are appointed to the language in 17:15, where it talks about the role of Elohim in there. For judges, it says the judges which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. And then with regard to the sovereign, it says whom Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. Is that really the same thing? Is Yahweh supposed to actually anoint or approve of the judges as well as he does approve of the sovereign?
Okay, so yes, but let me kind of explain maybe how that would work. All right? So when it comes to the king, we see this happening with Samuel, right? Samuel anoints Saul. Samuel goes looking around and finds David. Okay, that's the way it was supposed to go. Now, of course, that means the Melchizedekian or the prophet is the one that's doing the anointing of kings, not the Levitical. Remember, you got two priesthoods running sort of, concurrently through this thing. At the same time, also, as far as the judges, again, the judges come again according to, remember, the people would select out some people, you'd have some people with reputation, but then the anointed appointed would select out those heads of or people to be in those positions of judging. There is a lot of judicial stuff that is done by the priests. They're already selected out that Yahweh said, I'm picked the Levites to do this. So he's not doing that each time with each people. That one is sort of an ongoing generational thing. I chose the tribe of Levi to do these things. And I chose the Kohanim, the high priests, the children of Aaron, to do certain things according to that. Okay?
Well, what's clear from here, what struck me here is there's still this vertical alignment, that none of this was intended to be a substitution for anything. Because the judges are instructed to rule righteously, righteous right ruling, which goes right back to Torah. And if they don't understand what to do, they have any questions, they're to go up to the priests, and they're supposed to rule according to the Torah, and we're supposed to take that as what it is. The same thing, though, the same rules were put in place for the sovereigns, where it talks in 17:16. What caught me right there was they talk about not increasing horses and then not increasing the number of wives. And what occurred to me was the mess that Solomon got into when he increased all his horses and increased up to 700 wives. And then it says in 1 Kings 11 where it talks about that's where his heart started getting turned away.
Amen. I agree 100%. Look, there's a lot of stuff that's in there where the judges are told, look, just because you put an authority, don't judge with partiality, judge righteously, as Pete was pointing out. And remember, the anointing and the appointing, well, the anointing comes from Yah. You either have, let's just make it simple. Don't make it all Christianized into complicated stuff. Anointing means that you've been given a gift or a talent at something, okay? That's all it means. And that gift or talent comes from above. And not everybody has the same gifts and talents. And don't look at it just from like Paul's writing, trying to figure out these spiritual gifts. Okay? When you watch people in the praise team play, you can see they have an anointing to play instruments. You see hopefully an anointing when I teach. You see people have an anointing when they, have how they interact with people, whatever they do. I mean, I watch people have incredible anointings, like fixing my car. There's no higher level or lower level of anointing. When you need a good teaching, that anointing's important. When you need your plumbing fixed, that anointing's important. Okay? How many of you have ever had someone not anointed fix your plumbing? They don't have the gift or talent for it, but they have training. And there's a talent to these things. And so you want to look and figure out what your talents are and where your anointing is. And so don't think of anointing as only being about some spiritual thing. You've been given a gifting and a talent in some areas. Some of you are just tremendously empathetic, good listeners. Okay, I am not. You wonder about that. Surprise, right? A red person would be not a good listener. But some of you are fabulous at it. That's your anointing. Okay? And don't envy anybody else's anointing. Now then the other side of it is the appointing. It takes somebody who's already appointed to appoint others. And that's what I think Pete's getting at. You know, Yah appoints, and then those that he appoints then appoint others. See, Samuel was appointed, and then it was up to him to appoint and to anoint. Hey, remember, he went and selected out David. Okay, the people didn't pick David. Samuel went and found him. Okay, and that's kind of how it works. Just like when we talked about in the previous reading where they brought the men of good reputation to Moses, but Moses then selected them out. Who knows how many they brought him and how many he picked and whether there was any that he didn't pick. Okay? Now some of you, and again we do this little exercise real quickly, some of you have said, well, how come we don't have more elders and this and that and everything else? Because, remember, because they'll say, well, Moses had how many? How many? How many? 70. How many men did he have to choose out of? 603,550. Do the math on that. That's like one for every, I don't know how many thousands of men that he got one out of. Okay? 603,550. Divide that out by 70. And then you know that he only had one out of however many. We don't have that many people in, probably, to get two of them, we don't have enough people in the whole world that are just Messianic at all. I mean, if you think about it and how that all works out, I mean, that's just, we don't even have any numbers for that. Actually, give me 1 second. If I can find it on my phone. Where did it go? I just updated my phone and now I can't find anything. All the folders moved around. My folder with the calculator is gone. What's the number? Divide that out for me, somebody. 603,550 by 70. 8,600? Actually, I finally found my calculator. Okay, so that's 8,600 just to get one. We got 450 here. How many people we have in our whole ministry? I don't know. But 8,600 to get one. Theoretically, you know. I mean, you know, just think about it. And we've got a lot more than just one for the small group we have. We're very blessed. Does that make sense? We're very blessed. But 8,600 for one. So as we think about these things, just kind of keep that in mind. And maybe you want to do what you have to do to become one of those one. But it's about the anointing that you have and whether you're appointed. Now, you don't get to choose your anointing, nor do you get to choose whether an appointed person will recognize your anointing. And you certainly don't get to choose what you're appointed to. That's with Korach and all that other problems that you find in Scripture. Well, I don't like what you gave me to do. I want to do what you're doing. You got to do what you do and do it with all your strength and might. Okay? All right, James.
Yeah, the first 10 verses of chapter 17, something that I seem to have gotten out of there was basically how to judge whether you listen to somebody who's appointed or not. They're supposed to judge righteously, and you're supposed to watch and see if what they say is true, which means compare it to Scripture or see what they say actually happens, or if it doesn't happen, or if they're going to lead you away from the Word.
Well, that's actually where it talks about when they say, you know, when a person is spoken at the end of the chapter 18, and it says, well, if they say it and it doesn't come true, then they're a false prophet or a false teacher. If you guys are still, look, it's up to you. I don't care what you do, I guess. But, I mean, if you're still listening to these guys that are naming dates and they're not happening and telling you events are going to happen and they're not happening, I don't get that, okay? I'm not mad at you. I'm not going to judge you. I just don't get it. And you know who I'm talking about. All those guys that promoted the blood moons, all those guys that tell you that they think this is the year and prepare to pack your stuff up and he's coming. And there's guys who are fairly prominent, and you know who they are, even in the Messianic, who are saying this kind of stuff almost every year for almost 30 years. And you guys still listen to these people. And people are going to be online right now. Oh, you just want everybody to listen to you, and you're just trying to tear down other ministries. I'm just telling you I don't get it. Right here he says, when you say in your heart, how do we know the word of Yahweh was not spoken? When that person speaks in the name of Yahweh and the word doesn't happen or comes not, that word was not from Yahweh. Yahweh hadn't spoken it. That prophet or whoever it is has spoken presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him. We got a lot of presumptuousness going on out there. Why are you still, but you don't understand. They were so helpful in my journey to get to this point. Good. I'm happy you got there. Move on. What is so hard with that? I know. It's emotional attachments. You are emotionally stuck because they did something that made a strong impression on your heart. You appreciate, and that's good, you appreciate what they were used for in your journey. Look, some of you had some tremendous life-changing stuff happen in a mainstream church. Some of you were in some really bad places before you got to that place. Appreciate that, but you're not there anymore, and you don't want to go back anymore. Why can't you do that with this other stuff? You can appreciate it and move on. Does that make sense? I just don't get it. It's foolishness. These people are busy disqualifying themselves, and I've actually warned a few of them as they were doing it and said, that teaching you just put out, you need to take that down because you just said a whole bunch of stuff that isn't going to happen. You're going to look dumb and you're going to embarrass yourself. And you know what? They didn't take it down and they did look dumb because they named all those blood moon dates, and those dates ended in 2017 that they first put in that teaching. We're 2 years. Welcome to the second year after the apocalypse. Year 2 post-apocalypse. You know how they talk about common era, CE. Now we're, PA, post-apocalypse. Nothing happened. Oh, well, now we're going to explain to you why it didn't happen and change our dates. Oh, come on. People are making life-changing decisions because you said that. And the people don't even understand that when you're talking about this stuff with your friends, your children are listening and thinking, what's the point in going to school? What's the point in having a career? What's the point in thinking about getting married? We're never getting there anyway. After all, my parents keep telling us the world is going to end next year. You don't think they're listening? You know they're listening. And you wonder why they're not motivated. You wonder why you're not motivated. You don't think, you know what? And what did I tell everybody? I put myself out there to be a false prophet. I said to you, it wasn't going to happen. That doesn't make me a genius or a prophet. I simply said it wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen. Okay? But I told you also that you shouldn't be naming the dates. But if you do, you put yourself at risk for this. And you deserve to have your ministry taken away. Because he's warned you not to do it. You do it anyway. But I like him. What does that have to do with anything? I got a bunch of people following me who don't like me. So apparently it doesn't matter. What does liking have to do with it? No, I like him. Okay, look, do what you want. It's your journey. It's your journey. Do what you want. Okay, James?
Yeah, the other thing I had on here was from verse 16. So the sovereign not to return to Egypt to increase gain and not to lead others to do that. And it's pretty much his, or Mitzrayim, not to go back to the world, to be enslaved by others to try to increase what you have.
Right.
Don't
And then,
go
of
that
course,
route.
he then says about taking the wives, who also might lead you astray. You got to be, that's where the unequally yoked stuff can come into play. You got to be very aware of that stuff. Okay, what do you have? Do you have something on the live stream? Okay, wait. I don't even know what we're going to be able to get to. It's already 11:18. We need more time. Okay, how did Joshua get that sun to stand still? How did he? We need a little one of those moments. Get a few extra hours. Okay, in chapter 17, I've beaten this to death, but you still need to hear this. Okay? First of all, well, before I beat that to death, just so you know, there are some verses here in chapter 17 and also in chapter 19 that talk about how we deal with witnesses. That is what Yeshua was referencing in John 8 when he talked about the woman caught in adultery. Okay? Because if you look at in chapter 17, it says, "At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall he that is to die be put to death. He's not to put to death by the mouth of 1 witness." That's verse 6. And in verse 7 it says, "The hand of the witness shall be first against him to put him to death, and the hand of all the people last." If you knew this, if you knew it, if you understood it, when Yeshua said, "He who was without sin gets to throw the first stone," your brain would go, "Oh, this is about the quality of the witnesses." You see? It wasn't about the Christianized. It has to do with, well, the one who's perfect can do it. Because they all focus on the one without sin. No, this is talking about, are you a false witness or not? Because in chapter 19, we're told that in verse 16, it says, "When a malicious witness arises up against a man to accuse him and turning aside, then both men who have the dispute shall stand before Yahweh, before the priests and the judges are served. And the judges shall diligently search to see if the witness is false. And if he's false, guess what? Then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother." So Yeshua says, hey, whoever's without sin, if you're a true witness, you get to throw the first stone. But if you're a false witness, we're going to stone you. And they all put their rocks down. But if you didn't know the Torah, you would have no idea what Yeshua was talking about. Actually, you know what? In almost everything Yeshua ever said, you would have no idea what he's talking about. Because some of you thought you knew the Messiah real well from Christianity. Can you agree that you did not know him as well as you thought you did? All right? For those on live stream, you couldn't see necessarily all these hands went up. Okay. So, just so you understand that, you have to know the Torah because he refers to it, and everything that he interacted with the Pharisees, the scribes, they were all about legal stuff. They wanted to make sure that they could try to prove he was breaking some law so they could discredit him and ruin his ministry because they didn't like what he was doing. And he checkmated them every time. Here they go. They bring a woman to him. We didn't read the verse today, but the verse says, you catch somebody in adultery, you bring him and her to the priests and the judges. So what did they do wrong? 2 things. They only brought her, and he wasn't a priest or a judge. Wrong person without the other person. So they brought her to the wrong person and didn't have everybody. How? Now, they said she was caught in the very act, so apparently it was a naked guy running around and escaped them somehow. He must be fast and found some clothes quickly. Put out an APB on a naked guy running. You should be able to find the guy. Okay? So they brought her without him, brought it to Yeshua, wrong person. He wasn't a judge yet, wasn't in charge of anything yet. And then they had to be tested on the false witnessing. So people say, well, he was writing in the dirt, all their sins. No, that would break Torah. He wasn't writing their sins in the dirt. Okay, what he was probably writing, we don't know, was, Leviticus chapter whatever, where it says about the rules about adultery. I don't have the verse in front of me. Deuteronomy 17, about 2 witnesses. Deuteronomy 19, we're going to stone you. And they're like looking over going, oh man, he got us again. And that's when he finally got up there and said, look, we see the idiomatic phrase, whoever's without sin. He was saying, whoever's a true witness. There's nobody without sin except him. He wanted to know if you're a false witness or not. And then they leave her standing there. You know what? Leaving her standing there proves she never did anything. Because those who caught her would have still had to bring her to the right people and do it the right way. See, but you want to believe, as Christianity taught you, this is about his love and his compassion. And he overrode that law to show her mercy. Nonsense. So then he punished her at the end, though. He said, go and be perfect. Thanks a lot, Messiah. Great. No, he said, go and don't be involved in this stuff again. Stand up for yourself. Don't let them rope you. Because I believe in that society, they probably grabbed this woman and said, you stand here, don't say a word, don't move, or we will kill you. Because they didn't want to stone her. They wanted to see what Yeshua would do so they could accuse him of not understanding the law. And then when they realized they failed in that, they just left and left her standing there. So what does he say to prove my point? Woman, where are your accusers? Well, there really weren't any accusers. There was a setup. It was a frame job. So they just left her standing. Now, she's still standing there. Notice that she didn't just run off as they ran off. She was told, you stand there, I believe. And she wasn't going nowhere. She just like, I'm standing here. They told me to stand here. I'm scared to death. In this society, if all those men told me to stand here, I'm at big risk if I don't do what they said. Women, you understand what I'm talking about, okay? So that's why she's still standing there. Because you would have thought as everybody was leaving, she would have just gone. I mean, there wasn't anybody to hold her anymore. If she was guilty, especially, you think she would have run. At the any second that she thought she could get away, you think she would run. After all, the guy ran, if there was a guy, right? Wouldn't you? As soon as you see everybody leaving, wouldn't you like, give me an inch, give me 3 steps, never mind. Okay, we'll get a little Leonard Skinner reference in there for everybody, okay? But seriously, right? All you need is a little bit of daylight. Boom, you're out of there. She's still standing there. Because she didn't know what to do now. They didn't tell her what to do next. They told her to stand here. Don't go anyplace. All right, so that's important. So then we get into 17. Look, and a lot of you already heard this, but we've got a lot of new people. If you're going to do what it says, which is when you run into a problem that you don't know what to do. Now, it says between plea and plea, blood and blood, whatever. So it's supposed to be the most serious things. But if you run into stuff where you don't know what to do, if you're going to go get counsel, then take the counsel. If you're going to get an opinion, well, that's fine. Just don't come to me. I don't want to give opinions. I take very seriously my counsel. So do most of the men, hopefully all the men in our leadership. We take very seriously our counsel. So don't just use us for an opinion poll. Well, I just wanted to know what you thought about this. No. Do you want my counsel? And are you willing then to take that counsel and do it? Otherwise, you're being arrogant. That's what it says. I'm just reading you the verses. Now, nobody made you come see me, but if you choose to come see leadership, you need to be prepared to do what they say. And you've heard some testimonies here of people that have said, well, yeah, I talked to Rabbi and I didn't do what he said and it didn't really work real well. Then I decided to try what he said and then it worked. And by the way, it's not because I'm so smart. It's because I'm trying to be the channel for him because he's so smart. And even if I'm not exactly right, he'll bless you and honor the fact that you honored the structure. You honored the protocol. And so he'll work with you because you did what you were supposed to do. So you will be protected in case I'm wrong. Do you understand that? Okay, if I'm right, I don't get the credit, and if I'm wrong, he'll protect you. How's that? That's the way the protocol works. But he also says to the leadership, don't you get all arrogant and all full of your place. You need to judge without partiality. You need to judge with righteousness. Make yourself a copy of that Torah. Keep it in front of you. You're the king. You think you're in a high position. But he leaves out one of the things that should have been in that verse. I'm not trying to correct my Heavenly Father, but it would also be, and by the way, read it occasionally. These guys sit there, make a copy, put it in a drawer somewhere, and forget about it. That's why you have good king, bad king, like every other king. You know? He says, write a copy of it. Okay, so it'd be when he sits on the throne, he shall write for himself a copy, with the understanding that he's going to read it. Now, why is he supposed to write? He says it in the next verse. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it every day. So he did say to read it. So I stand corrected. I'm like reading, going through, and it was right there. Why? Why does he have to read it? Why should you read it every day? You're supposed to be a king and priest someday. By the way, you're not a king or priest now. Some people think, I'm a king or priest now. Not yet. Someday, hopefully. So that you learn to fear Yahweh and guard all the words of his Torah and his laws to do them. See, these guys are stuck it in a drawer, made a mistake. They just stuck it somewhere. No, you got to read it. He shall read it all the days of his life. So it's not that Yahweh forgot to tell them to do it, they forgot to do it. That verse is, they read the part, okay, I need to write a Torah, write a Torah. Some of you, I don't know how many of you did that thing where we had like a little challenge to write the Torah out? Okay, excellent. Make sure you read it every day. Now, you don't have to read yours. I mean, maybe your handwriting wasn't so good or whatever. Well, I don't care. You can read a different one, but just read it. Okay? Read it every day. All right. We've got about 30 minutes, not even. Okay, so chapter 19 or go into 20 if we want. 20? So you got 20 over there? All right. Hopefully we can get 20 and 21 here pretty quick.
From Amy, chapter 20, verse 8. Rabbi, can you help me understand this verse compared with Luke 9:59 through 61, and also with Luke 14:15 through 24?
Wait, Matthew what?
9:59 through 61.
Matthew 9. There aren't that many verses in 9.
Not Matthew, Luke.
Luke 9?
Luke 9:59.
Oh, there we go. Luke 9:59. Yes and no. Okay, so yeah, I mean, look, what you have is in Deuteronomy chapter 20, what he's saying is this, and I guess military guys can really understand this. If you've got a coward in the group, that guy's going to get everybody killed. Okay? And so better to let him go home than to leave him there where he's going to get everybody killed. I'm not saying that this is describing a coward, although I think it is to some degrees in chapter 20 here. But it's saying, look, the person that is, and that you're reading in Luke is the same idea. And Luke is talking about, the person when he said, follow me, and the person said, well, let me go first and bury my father. All these people had excuses. Better to let all the people with the excuses leave than they be contagious and other people pick up on the same mindset and it spreads. So he's talking about the same thing here. When you're about to go to battle and you're getting the men set up for war, all of these guys here are either going to be too distracted, like the ones who just got married and that kind of thing, or the ones that just don't have the ability to have the courage and the heart for it. Better to let them go. They're only going to cause more harm than good because it will be contagious potentially. Okay, so that's kind of that's the linkage to the verses in the New Testament. Okay, next question. That was it? Okay, over on this side, chapter 20. All right, 21, 22, 23, going once, going twice. Okay, we're not up to 22 yet. I'm on 21, 21, 9, 21, okay. Do I hear 21, 9, 21, 2, 21, 2, going 1, 2, okay. I do not know how to do that stuff. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this may not be an important question, but I just was wondering in verse 21:5 at the end.
Yep.
It says, and the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for Yahweh your Elohim has chosen them to serve him and to bless in the name of Yahweh, and by their mouth every strife and every stroke is tried. Is that, they're obviously wringing the heifer's neck or doing something there. Is it, I was wondering if that was significant.
Well, no, it's basically saying, look, the leadership here, okay, it's their job to test, prove, research, make sure, do all the different things that are happening. They are there to be the authority, to supervise, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, remember, he's talking about, and the elders of the city shall bring the heifer, and they're going to do these things. But he's saying, look, and the priests and Levites shall come near, for Yahweh your Elohim has chosen them to serve. He's telling you their job. This is why he wants the priests to come near. The priests are coming near not to do anything at this moment, except they're coming because he has chosen them to serve, bless in his name, and by their mouth the decisions are made. Okay? So that little thing is basically giving their resume, why they're doing what they're doing.
Okay. And the other question relates to 21:23. It says, "Let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall certainly bury him the same day. For he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, so that you do not defile the land." We had a lot of teaching about defiling the land in Christianity, and I was just wondering, is that talking about the land becoming unclean, and what repercussions in God's eyes does that have?
Okay, so when we look at these things, remember we talked about this a little bit before, that there are some things that are individual, some things are corporate. And the corporate things are basically expected to be done in the jurisdiction known as the land. And what you do in the land either is going to defile it or it's going to honor it being the land. And so it's not just about the land, like did you do the requirements of letting it lay fallow for a certain period of time or only taking the fruit off it. That's directly for the land. But when you do idolatry in the land, it does something to it. When you do any other sin, remember they got thrown out of the land for breaking the Sabbath and doing idolatry, the two main things that got them thrown out. Okay, neither of those two things actually directly affect the soil or the dirt known as, that you would think of as land. It's the land being the space that was allocated for Torah observant Israel to live in. You are disrespecting and dishonoring the space. And there's nothing more shameful than the one that's being hung on a stick. Hanging was one of the ways that you would have the greatest amount of shame in terms of death. That's why they were crucifying, the Romans were crucifying people, because it was the most public way to shame a person and their family. All right? So that's why he says, look, don't leave them on there, because that's going to bring shame to the land. Land being the place that I intended for Israel to live and dwell in righteousness. We don't need that to be hanging out there bringing shame. It's intended for shame. Okay? All right, next question. Okay, you had one for 21 or 20? 21, okay. Can you bring him the mic? That's okay, you can stay there. We got the camera on you. Big brother is watching.
Always. Always watching. Okay. Chapter 21, verse 17.
Yep.
When it was talking about the firstborn. And when that was being read, it kind of made me think about, and I don't know if this is the same situation or not, but with Abraham and Hagar.
You got to bring it right.
And how Ishmael did not get the double portion. So I didn't know if that's the same situation or how that applies, because sometimes Yahuwah chose the secondborn over the firstborn.
Okay, so a lot of it's going to have to do with, good question, a lot of it's going to have to do with how you came about with that situation. Okay? So, if Abraham had chosen Sarah, which he did, okay, and then he went and he chose Hagar, which he didn't, okay, and then this is a protection against the now unloved wife, which is why he chose a second. The scenario I'm choosing is where the husband had an unloved wife. For whatever reason, he wasn't all that pleased or whatever it was, didn't divorce, and he wanted to get the second wife. And by the way, we have all this first wife, second wife stuff going on here. Recognize, for all you obsessive people that really get your families in trouble, there is no commandment to get a second wife.
Don't want one.
Because I'm only saying that with that kind of, finger pointing, because some of you act like it's a commandment. And there are teachers out there that teach it like it's a commandment. But there's also no negative command. It was allowable in that time, in that culture. It is not breaking Torah to have more than one wife. Okay? And I love my wife dearly. And I have a wife now for 20 years. And I don't know why anybody would want two. And that's not a negative on her. Because it takes all of my available time to treat her correctly. So it's not that she's negative, it's that I don't have the capacity to give to one enough. How could I do with that with two? Okay?
How did Jacob do 4?
All right? And then you look at poor Jacob. He had 4 of them. Okay? So I'm not saying why would you want 2? You don't have the ability to take care of, provide what they need for 2. Besides, they might gang up on you. You think you have a hard time handling your wife now? What if you had 2 of them and they were in cahoots? Figure that out, you'd be in real trouble, double trouble. So when you deal with what was going on with Ishmael, you have a different situation. Sarah forced the issue. Sarah was not unloved. And Ishmael was to be the son for Sarah. And so Yahweh said, no, your son's going to come through you. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right? And by the way, Abraham wanted it to be Ishmael. Okay? He loved Ishmael. Okay, Santi, go ahead.
I have a question on chapter 21, verses 18 to 19 and 20. It's talk about wayward and rebellious children. You have to bring them to the elders.
Yeah, we're going to meet at the gates later if you have a child that... I didn't mention it's on the schedule. We had Pidyon Haben for redeeming them, and now we have the booting them out. We got stones there, too. Some of you are laughing because you think, yeah, that's a great idea. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, so, well, if the children been like this, would they stand there and allow you, they are adult, they just allow you to grab them to be stoned?
Well, look, first of all, according to Jewish sage tradition, this was never implemented, okay? It was something they could have done, but they never did it. That's what they say anyway, all right? But it was just something for you to understand that, look, you need to have this fear and understanding that if you're not, again, what we talked about, I think, earlier in the chapter when we were talking about the idea of being contagious, if you're going to have a rebellious spirit, a contrarian, you're going to be belligerent and everything, that could feed over to the rest of your children. It could feed over to some of the community. That one at some point needs to be told, look, you either shape up or ship out, okay? And so that's kind of where we were going. Because, look, remember, this is a community as it was forming that was incredibly susceptible to negative influences, okay? We call that sniopt, susceptible to negative influences of other people. They were really susceptible. And so that's why he said, when you have these things, you need to purge the evil out of the camp. He said it was evil when you went in Deuteronomy 17 to get leadership instruction and you arrogantly disregarded it. That's evil because other people might do the same thing. So this instruction simply says, look, the son that you have, if he's just really being a bad example and he just refuses. Remember, this is one that absolutely stubbornly is embracing his lifestyle that is aberrant to the rest of the community. He says you can bring them to the elders and you should get counsel and everything else first, but this is that last resort. They're just going to take him out and get rid of him. It's there. They say they never did it, so I don't know what else to tell you. Okay?
Yeah. Today, if we have an adult son or daughter live with you, and if this person act violently or abusive, should we call up the elder or call police or what to do?
Look, if it's an adult child, then you have to deal with them like they're an adult, period, not an adult child. If they're being abusive and everything else, then do what you would do with any other adult. You need to call the police if it's something dangerous. You need to ask for counsel from leadership if it's something that may be able to be handled. But if they're an adult in your house and they're giving you a problem, show them the door. What's wrong with you people? Oh, but they're going to do this and that's their life. That's their choice. Why are you enabling and entitling your children? You got your adult children acting all whatever. Tell them they can go do that somewhere else. Oh, but they're going to go into the worst after that. That's their choice. If you really think that you want to be, if that's such an important thing, then stop whining about it. You can't have it both ways. You want to enable them and help them and coddle them, fine. Then don't whine about it. Own it. Or show them the door and say, this is not acceptable in my house. There's the door. Go do that somewhere else. You're an adult. But you don't understand, they don't have a job and they don't know they don't have a career, they don't have this, and they're going to end up in a homeless shelter. Well, that's their problem. Maybe they need to wake up from their belligerence. You know what Yahweh does to belligerent people? He allows their lives to spiral into the muck so that they can actually wake up. You see that in Scripture. It's called cursing. What did the prodigal son story's father do? Oh, are you wise guy, belligerent, know-it-all, smart, blah, 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 son? Here's your inheritance. Go. That doesn't mean you're not going to be like the father also. Be ready to welcome him when he comes back with his, you-know-what between his legs. His, the tail between the legs, like the dogs all realize is messed up. And then you say, okay, did you get it? You understand now? You ready to behave? Then you can come back in my house. Look, I've always understood from Scripture, and we've always applied this in our ministry. If we've ever, which is very rarely, have had to ask anybody to leave, we've always told them, if we've had that opportunity, what they needed to do to come back. Because the desire is for them to be back and to be a non-negative part of the group. In other words, they cannot be out there causing harm. All right? And we never threw anybody out for a different belief, only if they were trying to foster that belief and cause confusion and harm in the body. Because we say, come as you are, and I'll even protect you if you're coming in a way that may be very hard for some people. You know, we've got some people that smoke still. There's some people that have given that up who are really kind of obnoxious about treating people that still smoke. We've got some people that have contacted me in the past and said, I don't remember whether they used one of the transgender terms, but they were gay of some sort. Would I be a problem if I came to your feast? I said, only if you have no intention of working on fixing that. If you come here as that, absolutely I will protect you from anybody attacking you. As long as you're here to work on it. It's come as you are. But there's a lot of you out there that would give them all kinds of mocking and grief. Shame on all of you who would do that. Come as you are, but allow them the space to change. A lot of you are very thankful that you were in such horrible places, maybe not that, but maybe in other really horribly, non-conducive to societal behaviors. And somebody gave you the space to work that through when you came through your journey. And you found a church or something that allowed you to work that through. We need to do that, okay? But if it's going to be something that could be contagious, meaning that the person is actually actively trying to spread it and doing it openly, which means it gets spread by imitation. Okay, so I told the person, if you come and don't make an issue of it, don't make it public, don't kind of draw attention to it and just walk your thing out, that's great. But if you're going to try to walk around and try to promote it as if this is a good thing or whatever, and this could be anything. It could be any kind of behavior that's against the Scriptures, because we all come with a lot of that. Some of it's a lot more benign than others in terms of, the way people might look at it. But all of it is sin and all of it's death in the end of it. Okay? Amen? Okay, Anders. And Santa, you dropped something. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Am I allowed to step back a little bit?
Sure.
Sure. First, just a comment on chapter 19 and verse 6.
Yep.
It's saying, lest the revenger of blood, while his displeasure is hot, pursue the manslayer and overtake him, because the way is long and shall strike his being, though he was not worthy of death, since he had not hated him before. So then it just struck me that the hating is the crime. That is what's worth of the punishment, just like Yeshua said.
Well, here it's specifically talking about, accidental killings.
Yeah, but the point is that it was, he didn't hate him and therefore not worthy of death. So if you turn it around, if you hate someone, you would be worthy of death.
Yeah, that connects to what Yeshua says about murder and hate, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I just want to also understand that there are some psychopath, sociopathic people that are emotionless and they just do their crazy stuff, and it's not necessarily clear that it's a hate thing. So I don't want to make it only about the hate, okay? Because there are some people out there that are just sort of dead inside, and they do what they do unemotionally. But yes, what Andrew's saying, that connects up with what Yeshua said in Matthew when he talks about if those who, it says don't murder, but you hate your brother, and you say racha and all this other stuff, that this is no good. Okay, good.
And the second question is in chapter 17 and verse 9. And shall come to the priests, the Levites, and to the judge who is in those days, and shall inquire, and they shall declare to you the words of right ruling, and you shall do according to the word which they declare to you from the place which Yahweh chooses. And you shall go out to do according to all that they instruct you. So I'm trying to understand in Matthew 23, in the beginning there, he's saying, the scribes and Pharisees sit on the seat of Moshe. Therefore, whatever they say to guard and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on man's shoulder. So I'm trying to understand, so they're commanding them things to do on their shoulders, so they're saying things.
Okay, so you have to understand that there actually is some idiomatic phrases here and some literal stuff. There actually was a seat known as Moses' seat, and from that seat they taught Torah. So he's saying, look, when they sit in that seat and they're teaching Torah, you need to do what they say. Because this wasn't about people coming to them for judgment necessarily. This is about them instructing, etc. But they're also saying here, you got to remember, though, they're hypocrites. They're not doing according to what they say. Their works don't match their words. They don't walk the talk. Okay, and then the heavy burdens, hard to bear, they lay them on shoulders, but their finger. So, understand that they're asking people, again, this heavy burden's hard to bear. They're asking people to do things that aren't easy because, when you come for counsel, if you are coming for counsel, you are going to be asked to do some things that might not be very easy. Okay? And so he said, but they're not willing to do the same thing. So don't look at it like, and I guess the way the wording is here, you can say, oh, they give them the Torah to do, and that's hard and burdensome, but they don't lift a finger. I don't think it's talking about that. Because some of you have come to ask counsel, you said to me, but Rabbi, that's hard. I said, yeah, I know it's hard, but you got to do it. And it's not Torah. It's maybe a challenge with a family member, with a spouse, with something with your career, and you're going to have to really do something that's outside of your normal routine and comfort zones, and that's a heavy burden, hard to bear. But these guys don't lift a finger to do anything.
All right, so in my eyes, I try to see how can I frame this to fit correct. And in, let's see, in chapter 17, verse 8, when any matters arise which is too hard for you to judge between blood and blood, between plea and plea, and between stroke and stroke, then saying matters of strife within your gates. So that gives me a context of where does this apply. And verse 11 is saying, do according to the Torah in which they teach you, according to the right ruling which they say to you. So it's all context within right ruling and the peace of the body.
Exactly. So, but just to clarify the idea of the burden is going to be your perception of it. Based on your life, they're going to maybe ask you to do some things that are hard for you to do. Okay? Not that it's hard to not eat pork or keep Sabbath. We're not talking about that. We're talking about when you're applying the relational Torah stuff. The stuff between blood and blood, plea and plea. Look, this is also comes into context when we start to get the verses in chapter 21, and places where it's talking about the revenger of blood and all those kind of things, that you're dealing with the idea of, it's not easy to calm down, let something go, accept that something was an accident, whatever it is. It's hard to deal with some of these things, but the judgment is we're going to give him a city of refuge to go to. Well, I don't like that. I want to kill him. No, he's safe in that city of refuge. That's a heavy burden to deal with. These are hard things. Okay, Greg, I saw you move up to the live stream, and we only have 8 minutes.
Okay, from Anna C. says, what if a man doesn't have sons? Does the firstborn daughter receive the same blessings, responsibilities? Referring to 21, 15, and 17.
Okay, they did have Torah for those that didn't have, remember there was the daughters of Salafachad, or I forget how you pronounce his name, and they didn't have an inheritance, so they were given the inheritance because there were no brothers there to give to. But remember, today we don't have that same kind of thing. We don't do inheritance that way. We don't have land issues the way they did tribally. Remember, this was done to protect a space that belonged to a tribe. And so through marriage and through inheritance, that space could be in a natural way or an underhanded way, eventually, taken over by another tribe. Naturally, meaning, somebody from one tribe happened to fall in love with another tribe, and next thing you know, the land disappears, and next thing you know, one tribe is dominating everything. Okay, so he meant for them to have their space, and that was to protect the space. Okay, so for today, when we're talking about inheritance, look, you should be providing and taking care of your children based on what you have. But, most of us barely have anything. Most of us leave our children with a burden. Forget about leaving them an inheritance. Okay, so it doesn't really end up being as applicable today. We don't have the same scenarios and situations. Okay? But, yes, you would give over to your daughters just like you would your sons. Okay, Greg.
Okay. I've always had this question, and then something Santi said about the children, rebellious children, and then something Anders said about the what he was talking about. But 1911, it's talking about this the man who hated his brother and then kills him, and then the command is that he flee to the city of refuge. And I don't know if it's me. I've always seemed like, do I have a criminal mind that I say, that would be crazy. The person who would lie in wait for someone like that, it seems like he'd just take off past the city of refuge and just keep going. And the thing that struck me just now was that the purging of that evil from the nation, it's like it's all accomplished in those two scenarios, because if the dude flees the country and never comes back, he's purged. And if the guy goes to the city of refuge, the Avenger of Blood's going to go, or the elder's going to take him, and then he's going to be purged. And the whole crux of that, after all this, comes down to purging from your gates, and the gates are right here, and you purge that stuff before it happens.
Amen.
And all is accomplished. Praise Yah.
Amen. Amen. Excellent. All right, that's going to wrap it up. We got Greg. You can just put it right back here in the mic stand. That'd be cool. Actually, you know what? Rob, come and get the mic, and then we'll give it to somebody to pray. Who's going to close us in prayer today? Okay, give it to Manny. We'll go with some of the people that are close by and make it easy. All right, Manny's going to go ahead and close us in prayer.
Abba, Father, we thank you for this wonderful morning to be able to receive your word and be able to receive a message, hopefully, that has touched us deeply where we need it in our lives. Father, I ask that you help us to really embed that in our hearts, that we may be able to meditate on it and really learn from it. Abba, I ask that you be with us throughout the day, that we may continue to learn, that we may continue to bless each other as family. Thank you for everything that you've done, and thank you for providing this time to spend with family. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen. Amen. And that's so funny. I just looked down at my paper and I missed like 5 things in chapter 18, but that's okay. It's like in my notes, I'm going, wait a minute, I didn't cover any of that stuff. All right, so real quickly, just so you know, in chapter 18, it talks a lot about do not do as they do. So you want to make sure you're learning about that. And there was the one verse that says, be perfect. Just remember, it's talking about having integrity. And I think, and the raising up a prophet, it's talking about all those of the Melchizedekians, those that would be speaking the word of Yahweh with authority, not just Yeshua, who is the ultimate fulfillment. And that was all from chapter 18. All right, enjoy your lunch.